In this project, we will be creating an open world platformer. We will be playing as a character alone in a randomly generated world. We will give the character the ability to collect resources, craft items, and place new blocks into the world. An inventory system will be added to the character where they can customize where things are gonna be. We will also add the ability for chests to be created where the player can put items into them. We will also add a day-night cycle so trees can grow over time, and when it is the night hours, the torches will be lit up, giving more life to the game. We will be also adding a saving system so when the character leaves the game and saves, when they come back, everything will be the same. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. In this section, we're going to go ahead and do some planning for our open world platformer game. We're going to start off viewing the entire game as a whole. Then we're going to go ahead and go over how certain components will work and what to expect from them. Then we're going to go ahead and picture how certain systems will be created. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. This here is going to represent the planning for our open world platformer game. It's going to be separated into 3 different sections: the main game screen, the player bag, and also the player components. Let's start with the main game screen in the middle. When you first start the game, you are going to be a player standing on some platforms of the generated world. As the player, you are going to be able to move around side to side and jump in the air if you are standing on a platform. All of the platforms are going to be interactable by the player. You're going to be able to select them and then destroy them, collecting resources. We're going to have 2 separate UIs on the main game screen. The UI on the left side is going to represent the current hotbar, which will have the current selected item. The UI on the right is going to be the main menu button. When you open up the main menu button, you're going to have 3 options: continue the game, save the game, or create a new world. Let's go ahead and move over to the player bag. The player bag is going to showcase the current inventory of the player. Each box represents a current slot you have in your inventory. If you want to move things around, you simply have to select one block and then the other to change them out. You're also going to have a trash button here that can throw away current items you have selected, and also a crafting button here where you can create new items if you have the current items that cost. There's going to be another type of UI that's also going to represent inventories, which is going to be the chest. When you interact with the chest, you're going to have a new inventory open up, which is going to showcase the chest items on the top and the player items on the bottom. If you go ahead and select an item in the chest box, it's going to then move it to the player. If you select an item on the player box, then it will move it to the chest box. You will see that as we get more into the development of the game. Let's go ahead and move over to the player components. The player components are going to showcase how the player will work in the game. For the animations and the look of the player, there's going to be 2 separate animation players. The upper half animation player is going to be part of the tools. So if you are basically using an item or using a tool, it's going to play a specific animation for the left side or the right side. The player will know which side to face depending on where your mouse is. If your mouse is towards the left side of the player will face the left. If the mouse is towards the right side of the player will face the right. And of course, play the animation depending on which side the mouse is on. As for the player movement animation, that'll be moved by either the walking, so when you're moving the player left and right, it'll play the walking animation. When he's standing still, it'll play the idle animation. And when the player is in the air, it'll play the in-air animation. As for how the player will select things and interact with the world around them, it will be using a selector, which will represent this little circle right here. The selector will be blocked by going too far away from the player by these selector borders. Selector borders allow us to make the game a little more realistic, preventing an extended reach of the player. When the player is hovering over something such as a tree or a block and wants to attack it or place something, that selector has to be in that specific location. So again, this represents the entire planning for the game we're about to create. So far, things are looking good. Let's jump right in and begin the development. Alright, in this section, we're going to go ahead and set up everything we need for our open world game. We're going to start off creating a new project. Then we're going to go ahead and add multiple folders for the art and other component types. Last but not least, we're going to import all the art and sprites being used. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, let's go ahead and create our new project. So in our Godot project manager, let's go on the top left, go to create. Let's go ahead, give it a name. I'm going to call this Open World Platformer. Then we're going to go ahead, leave everything else the same, and simply hit create and edit. Alright, once your project has opened up, then what we're going to do is we're going to simply select the 2D view, because that's where everything is going to be for our current game. Then we're going to add a couple folders here on the bottom left. Let's right click on the rest folder, create new folder. Awesome. So the first folder we're going to create is going to be the art folder. You can make it capitals or not capitals, that's up to you. I'm going to change the color of the art folder to red. We're going to go ahead, right click, create new folder. Then let's go ahead, let's call this one blocks. Perfect. I'm going to change this one also to another color. Let's just use green for this one. Let's create another folder. This one here, we can call this characters. Let's go ahead, let's change this one to another color. I'm going to change this one to pink. Let's go ahead, create another folder. Now this folder here, this one's going to be called data. And I'm going to leave everything as capitals in it. Let's change this one to another color as well. I'm going to choose purple. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead, create another one, folder. Next folder we're going to create, this one's going to be called nature. And let's go ahead, change the color of that one. Let's set the color to teal. Perfect. Let's go ahead, create another folder. This one's going to be called resources. And this one here, I'm going to make the color yellow. So let's right click, select color, yellow. Perfect. And then one more folder we're going to do. Let's go ahead, folder. We're going to call this UI. And this one here, let's go ahead, let's give it a new color. Let's just simply give this one blue. Awesome. All right, perfect. Save what you got. Looking good so far. All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to navigate on a web page to the assets pack we're going to be using. This one's going to be at kennys.nl/assets/blocks-pack. This is going to have everything we need for the type of game we're creating. It's going to have a bunch of different block types, resource types, and some character sprites as well. So go ahead down here and select download and make sure you've downloaded the entire zip. Alright, once you've downloaded the zip, go ahead, right click on that zip, select extract all. Once that finishes, you should have another Kenny Vlogs-pack right here without the .zip. And this is going to be the one we're using, so let's take that. Let's simply just drag and drop it into our art folder inside of our game. Now let that load, it might take a second or two, it's a pretty big file. Once that does it, let's go ahead and make sure it's in the art folder. Occasionally when you drag and drop things in here, it'll glitch and put it somewhere else, such as it's dropping it in the UI. So let's simply take that, drop it into the art folder, let that load. Then we'll double check and make sure it's in there, which it looks like it is. And if we open it up, we should see everything we need for the game. Perfect. Awesome. So let's go ahead, save what we got, and there we go. Alright, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the main scene. We're going to start off creating a new node for the main scene, which we are going to call world. Then we're going to go ahead and configure all the project settings. Then we're going to add in all the necessary world nodes. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and create that world node. We're just going to go ahead, 2D scene. Let's go ahead and just rename this world. This is going to hold everything inside of it. Let's go ahead and do that there. Perfect. You can leave the position. Let's go ahead and save the scene also. We're just going to save it in a new folder. Let's just call this scenes. There's really only going to be one scene, so it's fine to just save it in here for now. Awesome. All right. So next up, let's go ahead and adjust some of the project settings so this best fits the type of game we're making. We're going to project settings. So the first thing we're going to do is adjust the window. Just so things scale correctly for now, we're just going to go ahead and go to the mode right here. We're going to go to and go to, let's see, let's do viewport for now. And then instead of keep, we can just do, we could probably do keep for both actually, that's fine. Let's keep that for there. And then let's see, scale mode, fractional, yep, that should be okay. So let's go ahead, close that. Let's go ahead, save what we got. And let's simply go ahead, let's play the current scene we have. I just want to make sure this scales okay, which it is going to. Awesome, that's what I want. I just want it to kind of always stay the same, no matter how big we make it. Okay, perfect, awesome. I'm going to close that. All right, next thing we want to do, this is just going to help us in the future so we're not selecting things we don't want to select. Go back to project settings. We're going to go ahead into input map, and we're going to go ahead and go to the show built-in actions. And what I want to do is I want to turn off this UI except for the space. This basically is going to always select a button if you select space or any of these other keys. And because we're going to have the jump button equals space, we don't really want that because then it's going to start selecting things while we're jumping, which is not going to be good. So I'm simply going to go over here all the way to the right of it and just simply trash that one there. Perfect. Let's close that. And there we go. We might add or adjust things later, but that should give us a nice base plate for what we're making. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and add a couple other things for the actual game itself, for the world. So let's go ahead, right click, add child node. The first thing we're going to add is we're going to add a simple background, which we can use a sprite 2D for. So we'll go ahead, do that sprite 2D. And what we're going to do is we're simply going to give this a type of sprite we have in the art folder. Let's open that up all the way till we get to, let's do, I think it's going to be in tiles. And if we scroll down, we should see a background somewhere in here. If it's not in here, it might be in somewhere else, like the spreadsheets. If it's not in there, let's keep looking. Vector, nope. Let's scroll back up. Should just be background, and then we can just use that. Maybe it'll be an other. Yep, there we go, skybox. That's what I want. So you can go ahead and use any of these skyboxes. I'm simply going to use, let's just use like one of these ones here, skyboxbottom.png. You can use another one if you want to. I'm just going to paste this in. Perfect. All right. And what I'm going to do is basically we're going to eventually have our screen here where anything under the 0 axis is going to be, of course, where the floor is. So we're going to have basically a sunlight that only affects the top part here and everything else will be below. We'll get into that eventually, but I'm just simply going to make this a little bigger. And we're going to go ahead and just stretch this out to as far as we want the game to be. I'm going to do something like that. Perfect. Awesome. And again, we might adjust this later, but for now, I think this will be okay. All right, perfect. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and let's see what else we need to do. Because we're going to have light affecting this thing, we're going to go ahead and simply go to the material. We're going to give it a new material, new canvas material item, select it. And what we want to do is we simply want to select this light mode from normal to light only, okay? Now currently right now it's not going to be visible because we do not have the light, but when we do have the light set up, it'll make only the top part visible depending on where we put the light and its distance, okay? So go ahead, keep that there, perfect. Then if you wanted to change the color of it, you simply go to the visual, and I'm going to make this maybe a little more blue, like that. We can adjust it later, but I think it'll be okay. Awesome. All right. Now that we got that there, we can keep that. Perfect. We can also change the name to background so we know what this is. So I'm going to do background. Awesome. All right. Now, next thing we're going to do, we're going to add our actual tile set, which is going to be, again, another type of background. So let's go ahead, right-click, add child node. Let's go ahead. Let's do a tile map layer. Select that, perfect. And we're going to go ahead and we're simply going to new tile set. And we will add this later on, but let's just get it set up for now. I don't think we're going to need to adjust too much in here. So far we can keep everything pretty much what it currently is. We might darken it out a little bit, but we will get into that eventually. We're going to keep this and change the name. Let's call this Earth Background. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Then we're going to have the actual Earth node, which we will add stuff to that eventually. That's going to be where we are generating each type of little block. So let's go ahead and add a node 2D there. Let's just rename this Earth. Perfect. Awesome. We're also going to go ahead, add child node. We're going to add a canvas modulate, which is going to be the sky that's darkening and lightening over time. Let's add that in there. We can keep it as just canvas modulate. Now it does matter the position of everything here, so make sure you have background on top, earth background right before it, earth here, and then canvas modulate right here. Okay, awesome. Let's go ahead and add another one. Let's add another node 2D. This one's going to hold all of our UI. So let's go ahead, let's rename this. Let's just call this in-game UI. Okay, perfect. Awesome. And then we're going to also have the world light. Let's go ahead, add that. Let's go ahead, and we are going to do a point light 2D. We could use the directional light, but I find the point light is a little easier to control with this type of game we're making. So let's go ahead and just use that. And again, we are going to add this and add some other things to it eventually. I just want to get everything we need in currently, okay? Then we're going to have another node here below it, another node 2D. This one is going to be the world clock. So basically the thing that keeps track of what time it is in the current game. So let's call this world clock. Perfect. Awesome. And then of course we will add a player and then also the player pointer as well. But this should be everything we need for the base node of the world, okay? So let's save what we got, and looking good. All right, in this section, we're gonna go ahead and create the world view. We're gonna add the tiles for the earth background. Then we're gonna go ahead and set the color for the canvas modulate. Then, last but not least, we're gonna set the lighting for the world light. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's get started. First thing we're going to mess with is going to be the earth background, like I mentioned before. We're going to go ahead and add everything we need in here. So let's go ahead and select our tile set that we need. This is going to be in our sprite sheets. Let's go ahead and select the correct one. This one's for characters. We don't want this one. We do want, I think it's going to be this one here, sprite sheets. All right, so let's take that. Make sure we are selecting the tile set or it's not going to work. So let's go ahead, drag and drop that in. Let's go ahead and select no for this. Now, because this is a much bigger pack, we have to adjust it. It's not going to be a 16 by 16 one. So in the texture right here, texture region size, let's adjust this to what we need to fit, which I think it should be 128 for X and 128 for Y. So go ahead, select that there, 128, perfect. There we go, now it's going to be the appropriate size. We also need to adjust it here as well in the tile set, so select that there. See how it says 16 by 16 for tile size? Again, we need to change that to the appropriate size so it matches up. So 128 and then 128. We might also have to adjust the actual size of it as well because it's still going to be pretty big. And we can do that simply inside the transform. Go to the transform and simply set the X and Y of scale to 0.3. So let's do 0.3 here, and then make sure Y is 0.3 as well. All right, perfect. Awesome. All right, so now we just need to go ahead and match up everything we need for the entire background. Now again, we might adjust this later on, but for now, we're just gonna put basically dirt, grass on top, or we'll just do dirt for now on top, and then we're gonna have a layer of stone, and then at the bottom, we're gonna have bedrock, okay? So let's go ahead back into the earth background. Let's go ahead into tile set. Let's select the ones we want. And you can customize this how you want, but I think it matches up pretty well with the ones I'm selecting. So the dirt patch here, the stone one here, and then also the bedrock one right here. Okay, awesome. Let's go into tile map. Let's go ahead. Let's select the first one here, which is the dirt. Let's go ahead. Let's use the box tool so it'll be a little faster. As I mentioned before, we're going to do a dirt layer right below the 0. So let's go ahead, make sure we're putting it on the right one there. Perfect. And we're going to go ahead and do 3. So we should have 3 going like that. And just so it's matching up with our background, let's go ahead and select our background. Looks like we need a couple more over there. So let's go back over here. Let's simply add a couple more. Make sure you're selecting the right one. And let's go ahead and do it like that. Reselect the background, and perfect. Remember, we can always adjust this later, but for now, I think this will be okay. All right, next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead. Let's go ahead to the earth background again. Let's go ahead and let's use this one here, which is gonna be the stone. And the stone pretty much can go all the way down. The bedrock we don't necessarily need, but we might use it depending on how deep we make the game. That is adjustable. So let's just go ahead and do there for now. Let's go ahead and select background again. Perfect. I'm going to remove this little corner over here. Don't necessarily need this. Perfect. And then let's remove the bottom there. Let's go ahead, select background again. Awesome. Let's add a little bit of bedrock below just in case the player gets too far. We don't want to be able to have them walk. So let's go ahead. Let's find the bedrock. Don't know why it's not highlighting here. Oh no, there it is. Awesome. Let's go ahead and just make bedrock go from here all the way down. Perfect. Make sure we have the eraser turned off or it's not going to like it. There we go. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. There we go. All right. As mentioned before, though, we need to do the same thing we did with the background to give it that lighting effect. So let's go ahead, now that we have it made, let's simply go all the way over here. Let's go to, I think, material. And let me double check mine because we might not need to do this actually. No, we don't need to do this, but we do need to go ahead to visibility. And what we are going to do is we're going to make it a little darker. Okay, so let's go to self-modulate. And what we're going to do is just darken it just a bit, okay? Not too much, but just enough where you know this is the background, not the actual blocks you can mine and destroy. Awesome. So let's do that there. Perfect. And there we go. That's going to be our earth background. And this is, again, just a placeholder for the background so the player knows what depth they are in, okay? Awesome. Let's save that real quick. Perfect. All right, next thing we'll do, let's go ahead and go to our canvas modulate. And what we're going to do here is we're simply going to select it, and then we're going to set the color all the way to black. All right? Because if we don't have any lighting anywhere, we don't want to be able to see anything, okay? So that's going to darken everything currently in the game to the same color as black. All right? Awesome. But because we're going to change this eventually, we do need to go ahead and add some things for it. And I think we'll keep it for now. We'll adjust it with a script instead. So we'll keep this as black for now. But what we can do is adjust that light, okay? So we're going to go ahead. We're going to select the point light here. Let's go ahead and let me double check the one I did. I think I did the texture, gradient texture 2D. So we will select it, go to the texture, find gradient texture 2D. Perfect. Awesome. So this is going to add some lighting, okay? And because we only want the top part to be lit by the sun, we're simply going to go ahead and just move this on up. I'll just put it somewhere like there. Perfect. And then move it over here like that. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And there we go. So if we zoom in, you're going to start to see that the dirt here is a little more visible. But again, because we darkened it, it's going to look a little dark. If we want to make this a little brighter, we totally can too. There's another thing here. It's darkening more so on the right side, but we don't necessarily want that. We want it to darken basically from the top to the bottom, okay, so we can see everything on the bottom, all right? So to do that, we're going to select the actual texture itself, and we are going to go ahead and just simply adjust it to where we have the main point. So let's go ahead and just remove, or better yet, we can just go like this, and go like that, move that on down. We have to simply set this somewhere directly above it. Just make sure that we do that there. I could maybe even select it down here. If we want to adjust it, we could do that with this. Let's go to the fill. Let's keep it at linear, but let's make this from X to 0.5. There we go. And then let's go ahead and let's do 0.97 for this one here. And what we're going to do is 0.5 for the one below. 0.5 again. There we go. And keep that at 1. Perfect. So we zoom in. Looks like it's still not reversed though, and that's not what we want. We want it to be basically the opposite of this, so we can select this here. And we can just switch this around simply by hitting this button here. And there we go. Awesome. All right. Perfect. And again, let's double check our values. I think everything looks good there. We might need to go ahead and just adjust the point of direction so we can go like that to go a little bit lighter below. That's up to you. But I think that looks pretty good for what we're working with. All right. Awesome. Now, because we're going to have different settings here for this, I think a cool thing will be to add a little darker point over here. So let's go ahead and just simply select here. And let's go ahead and just make this one all the way dark. Perfect. So this will signify that it is going to be basically nighttime. So we'll have daytime throughout this part here and then nighttime over here. We will adjust this later on, but for now I think this will be okay. All right. But I think this looks really good for the lighting. All right. Perfect. So we have that there. I think we are set for that. So again, you can always adjust this if you want, but I think this looks really good. So let's select somewhere else. Save what we got. And there we go. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the global script. We're going to start off creating a new global script for this. Then we're going to go ahead and add all the variables that will be used in the global script. Last but not least, we're going to create a couple functions to save, recover, and manage the current data. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started with this global script. This script is very important because every other script and most of the other resources and other objects in the game are going to be connecting to this global script. So let's go ahead and create this simply by going to the top left, project settings. Then we're going to go to globals. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new script here. Let's go ahead and just call it global. Go ahead, hit enter to add that. Or you can plus this button here. Keep it at global.gd and hit create. To open it up, simply select this button right here, and there we go. Awesome. All right, so we're going to start from scratch here. I'm going to get rid of everything except the extends on the top. We're going to start off with a couple of variables. All these variables, again, are going to be interacting with other things throughout the game, so we have to make sure we get all these down. So the first one we're going to do is going to be a config, and we're going to equal that to a config file. So we're going to do config file, and then go ahead do a .new parentheses. Perfect. All right. Then we're going to go ahead. We're going to create another variable. We're going to call this world underscore map underscore array. And we need an array here to represent basically all the blocks that are in the current game. Of course, when we start off, we're going to have it empty as an empty array, just like that. All right. Next thing we're going to have in here, we're going to have something called the saved underscore hour. All right. And this is going to be the specific hour that is saved when you either start the game or, of course, continue it after having the save file filled out. And I'm going to set the default save value to 6. Then we're also going to have another variable. We're going to call this in underscore game underscore time. And we are currently going to equal that to a placeholder of 00:00 and then XX. That there is going to represent the default time. Of course, this is going to change and, of course, save over time in the game. Then below that, we're going to go ahead. We're going to create another variable. We're going to call this aiming underscore for underscore tool. And this is going to help us basically determine if we have current things being aimed. Then we're also going to go ahead, have another variable. This one's going to be called item underscore in underscore use, and that's going to be our current item in use that we have. We're just going to set the default one to pickaxe, just like that. All right, perfect. Then next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead, create a variable, and we're going to call this location underscore in underscore use. And this is going to represent which array value we are currently holding, because we're going to have an array value filled with all the items we currently have. So this one here is going to remember the name that it has, and this one here is going to resemble which location it is at. All right, awesome. So then next thing we're going to do, we're going to create another one here, which is called player underscore inventory. And we don't need to give this a value because the default value is going to be an empty array. But for now, we'll just keep it without an actual name. Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to create another one here. We're going to call this chest with an S, items, all right? And this is going to be an array of arrays. Every time we create a new chest, it's going to add a new array in here. And then, of course, in each array, we're going to have things such as the location of the chest and also the items inside of it, all right? Then we're also going to go ahead. We're going to do a couple variables for moving things around. Specifically, we're going to use the move underscore item underscore 1. So we basically can be able to set this one which will switch it out with the other one that's going to be right below it, which is going to be move underscore item underscore 2, which is also going to be null for now. So when we make this function, we are going to basically switch these two around and then add them back into it. And you'll see how that is when we create the function. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to call this a move. We'll create the variable for it. Variable move underscore now, which is going to initiate moving those two items above when it equals true. By default, we will keep that at false. All right, awesome. Then we're going to need another variable here. We're going to call this player underscore. We're going to do players with an S, players underscore position, which will save the actual player position, which by default, I'm going to simply set this to a vector2 of 0x, and then a -20 for y, which is going to be a little bit above the ground, okay? Awesome. All right, next up, let's go ahead. Last thing we're going to have here is a variable, and we're going to call this gradient underscore light underscore value. And this is going to set the light value of our current light that we have, the world light or point light 2D. We can rename that instead to something like world light, which I might go ahead and do real quick while we're here. So world underscore light. So that value we have down here is going to change this one. All right. But we will currently equal that to 1 for now. All right. Awesome. All right. I think that should be all of our variables. So go ahead, save those. I'm going to backspace right there, add an enter below it, and save that. Perfect. All right. Let's go ahead and create some functions now. So let's go ahead, below all our variables, add an enter. All right. So the function we're going to create is going to be called create underscore a underscore new underscore world. And this is basically going to reset all of our current values that we have. So when we reset the world, we're going to send everything back to default, okay? So what we're going to do here is simply set our config dot set value, and we're going to be setting a specific save file that we're going to call saved data. Then you're going to do a comma outside of that, still inside the parentheses. Then we're going to need the actual key, and we are going to name this first one world underscore map array, just like we have for the value, just like that. Okay, awesome. And of course, the default value for this is going to be an empty array. All right, then we could simply just copy this whole thing. Let's paste it below. So the next one, we're going to have that saved hour. So we can simply go ahead, take saved hour, paste it in right here. And just like we did with the variables, let's go ahead and just make this equal 6. Okay, awesome. Let's take this whole thing again, paste it right below. All right, the next one we're going to do is the player inventory. So let's go ahead, player inventory. Let's copy that. We're going to paste this here, and then we're also going to paste it here. Now the reason we're doing this here is because we're going to have a separate function that's going to reset things specifically based on the inventory. Because when we first start the game, we don't want the player to have a completely empty inventory. We want to give them at least like one type of tool. You can, of course, change that if you want to, but for now, that's how we're going to have it. All right, awesome. Then we're going to do a similar thing with the chests. Let's go ahead, copy that whole line, paste it below. And just like we did with the player inventory, we're going to take the chests items, paste in that for the key, and then also the values, which is going to be just like that. Awesome. All right, next one we're going to do is for the player's position. So let's copy the whole thing. Let's paste it below. Let's grab player's position. Simply paste it in there, and then simply take that same vector2 we have and paste it in right where that chest item is. Perfect. All right, so that's going to reset it to the default. Perfect. Now these are going to be the first ones we're going to do. Eventually we'll get to the other ones, but for now we can go ahead and save the actual file. So this time we'll do a config dot save, and for the save, we're going to add the location of the file, which we're going to create that in just a bit. But where it's going to be is it's going to be at our rest folder, ://, and then we're going to put it inside of our data one, so data, /, and then again, we're going to name it saved data. All right, just like we have it above. And don't forget to do a .cfg for the config file. Perfect, awesome. So that currently doesn't exist right now, but we will add it once we're done creating a script. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and do the next one. It's going to be pretty similar. This one's going to be the saved current game. So let's go ahead right below. Let's do function let's go ahead, let's do save underscore current underscore game. And let's go ahead, complete the function. All right, so inside of it, we are basically going to do the same exact thing we did above, but instead of course setting the defaults over here, we're going to save it to what it's currently set at. All right, so let's go ahead and just copy everything we have in here, paste it inside of this function right here. And instead of placing things as the empty values like this one here for the world map array, we're simply just going to set this to the world map array. Same thing for the saved hour. We're just going to set this one now to saved hour. And then of course the player's position, we're also going to set it to player's position. All right, so we're going to set that to player's position. Perfect. And everything else we can leave the same. So when we call this function, we're going to be resetting things to defaults, and when we call this function, we're going to set things to what they currently are in game state. All right. Awesome. So now next thing we're going to do, it's going to be right below it. We're going to go ahead and do a simple process function here. This is going to be used for when we want to basically move things around. So we need to do a function underscore process delta. And then inside of it, we'll do a simple if statement. We're going to say if move now equals true. Then we're going to go ahead, do an await. We're going to call a specific function, start underscore the move. All right, don't forget underscore again, move, parentheses, perfect. All right, and then below that, we're just going to go ahead and set our move now back to false, okay? So this will be initiated in another script, but we basically have to keep track of it in here. Now you're going to get this little red here because we haven't made this, but let's go ahead and make this right below. I'm going to add some enters so we can see a little better. All right, let's go ahead and make that function. So function start underscore the underscore move. And that should no longer be red once we create this, just like that. Perfect. Now in this function, like I said before, we're going to use those variables that we have to actually switch certain items around, all right? So we're going to start off creating some new variables inside of here though, which we're going to call item underscore 1. We are going to go ahead though and equal that to our player inventory. And then we are going to be looking for that specific one that we set. So that move underscore item underscore 1. So remember the move underscore item 1 and 2, that's what we're going to set here. So now we just need to do the other one. Let's simply take that, paste it in. Instead of item 1 here, let's go ahead, change this to item 2. And then of course we need to change this one here to 2 as well. All right, perfect, awesome. So once we have that there, then we can go ahead and actually start changing some certain things, such as the player inventory. Then we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and set our move item 1. So let's take that, paste it in. And we are going to go ahead now and equal that to our new value, which is item 2. Okay, perfect. Then we're going to simply copy this whole thing and just switch it around now. So let's go ahead, paste it in below. Now instead of move item 1, this will be move item 2. So I'm going to take move item 2, drop it in there. And now we're going to equal this one to the move item 1. Or just the move item. There we go. Perfect. So it's going to look exactly like this. So we're basically just switching these around. Now because we don't want this to just consistently do it non-stop, a good way to make sure we don't is to simply do move item 1 and equal that back to the null value, which is the default value. And then we have to do the same thing for the move item 2. Okay, perfect, awesome. And there we go, awesome. So that's going to basically move the specific items we have around once selected. Okay, and again, we will go ahead and set what these are in another script, but for now, this is what's going to be handled in the global script. Okay, awesome. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use or create a new function called recover. This is basically going to bring everything back from that saved data that we have, the saved data value. So let's go ahead and do a function. We're going to call it recover. Then we're going to go ahead, give it some parentheses, colon, there we go. All right, so the first thing we need to do when we do a recover is we have to set a variable called data and equal it to our config.load. All right, so this is going to load in that specific file that we have there. So if you don't want to type it out, you can do what I'm doing and just copy the one we have above and just simply paste that in. So we're basically grabbing everything from that. All right, so now that we have that, I'm going to add some enters so we can see it a little better in the middle. Perfect. So now that we have that all, what we're going to do is we need to check and make sure the data returns correctly. So we're going to say if data equals, make sure to have two equals, OK, all caps. All right, that's going to give us this little check to make sure that the data isn't corrupted. All right, awesome. Once we have that though, then we can actually set some things, such as our world map array, which will equal our config dot load. All right, or instead of load, we could actually do get value. All right, it's going to be a little simpler. All right, and then of course we're going to be looking for the same things we've been looking for, such as what it is, which is the saved data. And then all we need to do is tell it, hey, which key are we looking for? Which of course we named it just like the array. So let's take that and paste it in, and there we go. Perfect. And that's going to be it for there. All right, so now we just need the other values. So let's go ahead and just copy that. Let's paste it in. The next one we're going to do is for that saved hour. So let's do saved hour here and simply take that saved hour and paste it in where the key is. Perfect. Let's copy this whole thing again. Paste it below. Now for the one below it, this one here is going to be for the player inventory. So let's type in player inventory, copy that player inventory, paste it in where the key is. Perfect. Same thing, let's copy the whole thing, paste it in. Next one we're going to do is the chests items. So chests items, copy chests items, paste it in for the key. Perfect. All right, then we're going to go ahead. Now that we get chests items, we need player's position. So let's go ahead, copy this whole thing again. Let's paste it in. Let's do player's positions. Take that, paste it in right over here. Perfect. Awesome. All right, and that should be everything we need to recover. We have the world map array, saved hour, player inventory, chests items, and player's position. Perfect. Awesome. And make sure you have all that. Make sure to save, and looking good. All right, next up, we're going to have another kind of reset function. So let's go ahead, add another enter. Let's create that function. This one is going to be called reset underscore all underscore inventories. And if you remember, we have two types of inventories. We have one for the player inventory and the other one for the chests. All right, so let's go ahead, finish up this function there. All right, so the first one we're going to do is that player inventory. And we're going to go ahead and equal this to an array value. And like I said before, we have a default item in here, which is going to be the pickaxe. You can always change this if you don't want this, but that's up to you. So I'm going to do pickaxe, which is of course the name, and then how many we have, which is just currently 1. All right, awesome. But because we are going to have a default value for all the inventories, especially the in-player inventory, we need to give it null values for the other empty areas. Now every inventory is going to have basically 18 slots, starting with 0, so 17 placed here, including 0, which is this one here. So we need to go ahead and add those. So we need to go ahead and do a null here, comma, null, comma, null, comma, null, comma, null. All right, so this should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's go ahead, and we're simply going to take this whole thing here, copy it, put a comma in front of the back one, paste it in, and just simply switch out this one here to a null value. All right, awesome. So then we're going to go ahead and copy 6 again. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have the first row, the second row, and then we just need to add the third row, which is this one. Awesome. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And of course, if you count 0, that's 17 total. Awesome. All right, and that should be good for that one. Now for the chests one, this one's a little easier. All we need to do is simply set our chests items equal to an empty array. And that's because this is an array of arrays, all right? We're going to have multiple chests possibly, so we need to basically have multiple arrays, just like if we would do this and then also this, all right? But we will get to that in the near future, all right? So keep it as an empty array. Perfect. All right, one more function to go. So let's go ahead and create that function. This one's called function. And we're going to call this remove underscore selected underscore item. And of course, this is going to do exactly what it says. It's going to remove a specific selected item. So let's go ahead and start off with an if statement. Say if move item 1 does not equal null and move item 2 equals null, because this will only go into effect, of course, if we have one item. So how this is going to work is if we select a specific item and then select the trash button, it's going to go ahead and remove that. But if we're moving something and we have multiple things selected, we don't want to start deleting. We only want to delete if we have one thing selected. Okay? You'll see that in action once we get started with the UI. But let's just create this function so we don't have to worry about it in the future. We're also going to have another if statement inside of it. We're going to say if player inventory, and then we're going to call move item underscore 1, and then we are looking for the value of it, so 1. If the value of it is less than or equal to 1, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to set that player inventory, and again we're going to go ahead and use that move item 1. But because we have equal to 1 or less, we are going to go ahead and just set that value to null. Basically, if we have 1 left and we are trying to delete it, we want to get rid of that whole slot. Okay, so if this is here and we have 1 left and we get rid of it, it should just remove it and entirely make it equal to a null. All right, but of course, if that's not the case, then we're going to minus it. So we're going to have an else here, and we're going to go ahead, set our player inventory. Again, inside of it, we're going to add that move item 1. And what we're going to do here is we're going to find the first value, which is going to be this number 1 here, because 0 would be the 1 here. We're going to go ahead and do a minus equals 1. So we'll minus equal 1 that value. All right. Last thing we're going to do once this whole thing is complete, we are going to set our move item 1 back to null. All right. Perfect. And that's it. Simple as that. Awesome. And again, once we get to the UI part, you'll understand how this is going to go into effect a little better. But for now, we should be looking good. Remember, you can always check the source code. Let's save what we got so far, and there we go. All right, last thing we got to do is create the actual save file. So let's go ahead and create that real quick. So let's go ahead into our data folder we have. We're going to right click, create new, and we are simply going to create a text file for this, all right? And we are going to call this saved, capital D, data, all right? And then make sure we create this as a .cfg, all right? Save that. And then go open it up, and there it is. Let's double click it. Perfect. So the first thing we have to do is tell it exactly what it is. Simply, we can do that by adding an array on the top and say saved data. All right, perfect. Then, of course, we need to add each type of value, which is going to be world underscore map array. And like I said before, this is always going to equal a empty array at first, so we can leave it like that. Then we're going to have saved underscore hour. We're going to equal that to 6. Below that, we're going to go ahead, do player underscore inventory. Go ahead, equal that to our default, which you can go ahead and grab that simply by inside of here. Find that default value, which is right here. So I'm going to grab that whole thing, copy that, and just simply paste that in, just like that. Perfect. Then let's do the chests value. So let's go ahead. Let's do chests underscore items with an S. And equal that to an empty array. And the last one, we're going to go ahead and do players with an S underscore position. And equal that simply to a vector2. Make sure the V is capital. Vector2 parentheses set 0, comma, -20. Save that. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. Go back to global. Make sure you still got no errors, which you shouldn't, and looking good. Awesome. Save it again. Back to 2D view. And there we go. Looking good. All right. In this section, we're going to go ahead and create the resources. We're going to start off creating a new node for the resources. Then we're going to go ahead and add a sprite that we can change it depending on what type of resource it is. Then we're going to go ahead and create a simple script that makes the resource collectible. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started creating the resources. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a new node for this. So let's go ahead, go to scene on the top left, new scene. We're going to choose other node for this one, and we're going to give it a character body. The reason why we're doing character body is because we want to be able to run into it, and of course give it some physics to kind of fall down when it gets created. So let's go ahead and let's rename this first one. The first resource we're going to be using, and basically using throughout it and just changing the sprite, is going to be the dirt resource. This is like our default resource. So let's go ahead and create that dirt resource. Perfect. Let's save that. Let's go ahead and put this in the resources folder, just like that. Awesome. All right. So for our resources, we're going to add a couple things in it. We're going to right click, add child node. First thing we're going to add is a sprite 2D. This is the one we're going to change throughout it. So we need to give it an actual sprite, and then of course scale it appropriately. So what we're going to do, we're going to go inside of our art folder, open it up. We're going to locate the tiles, and we're going to use just the dirt block for this, which is dirt.png. So take that, drag and drop it in, perfect. Now because the scaling is a little off due to these being a little bigger with the 124 by 124, we're going to have to decrease this to a size. So let's go ahead and let's try off with a 0.07. That worked really good for me before. I know that looks pretty small, but you'll see why in just a bit. So let's go ahead, save that. Awesome. All right. Then we might have to go ahead and add a couple other things. So we have the sprite 2D. Now we just need the actual collision shape. So let's go ahead, add that. Let's add the collision shape. Let's go ahead, give that a shape. Let's do a rectangle. Now we just simply have to match this up with the scale of it. It's okay if it's a little smaller, that's fine. We can always adjust that later. So let's go ahead now. And what we're going to do is let's go ahead, right click, add child node. We're going to add an area 2D. This is what's basically going to go into effect when we bump into it as the player and collect it. So what we're going to do is now add a shape for this as well. Add child node. Let's go ahead, add another collision shape. Perfect. All right, now this one here, we're going to make it a little bigger. So let's go ahead, create that. Let's make it somewhat bigger, about this size. And remember, we can always adjust this later. I just think this makes it look a little more natural when we bump into it. Okay, awesome. All right, and that looks good there. Let's save that. Perfect. Eventually, we will add a signal on top of this area 2D. Now we need the actual script, okay? So let's go ahead and add that script. We're not going to name it dirt_resource. Let's just go ahead and leave it as resource.gd. Just like that. Create. Perfect. Let's get rid of everything here so far. And then we will start from scratch. Save what you got. Looking good. All right, let's get started with this resource script. This is a very small script. It's not going to have too much in it. So let's get started with the variables we're going to need. We're going to start off with an @export. And this is going to be the variable representing the type of block that currently is set. So type of block. All right. And this will be a type of string that we are going to set specific on the block being used. The default value, though, we are going to set to NA, just as a placeholder. Below that, we're going to add another @export. This one here is going to depict whether this is a UI or not. The reason why we are doing this is because if it is a UI, we don't want it to be interactable. And of course, making it a UI just kind of helps us not have to recreate this just for the UI. We can reuse this same dirt resource to represent it in the UI. We might have to change the scale, but this will save us a lot of time and just be more efficient overall. Okay, awesome. So now that we have our variables, let's go ahead and create our first function. We're going to be using the function physics process. So let's go ahead, physics process, delta inside the parentheses, open it up. All right, so the first thing we're going to check is simply that UI thing. So we're just going to do an if statement for this and say if is UI equals false. Then we're going to go ahead, do another if inside of it, if not is on floor. And then we're going to go ahead, within that one, we're going to set our velocity plus equals get gravity. And then we are just going to times that by delta. All right. So we're just going to help give it some gravity. All right, and then to actually initiate that movement, we need to use the move and slide. Perfect, and that's all we're going to have in there. Now again, the reason why we're doing this is because we are going to reuse this eventually to be a UI object also. So we don't want to give the UI one gravity, we kind of just want it to stay still. We'll also change some things in the inspector for it as well to help out with that. But for now, we're going to leave it as this. All right. Now we can go ahead and do our area entered. So let's go ahead, select our area 2D, go to our node, select the area entered signal, connect it to the main script, and there we go. All right, so now we're going to have the actual interaction of it when the player runs into it. To first detect and make sure the player runs into it, we're going to do an if area dot is underscore in underscore group. And then we're going to simply go ahead, give it some parentheses, some double quotes, and we are looking for that player tag. All right. Now, if it has that player tag, then we're simply going to start it off with a variable, call this current underscore 1, and we are going to equal this to -1. This is just to help locate some things in the loop we're about to create, to go through and loop through whether or not we have space to add things for the resource. And if we do, then we're going to go ahead and add it in. If, of course, there is no space, we'll find the first null, and just like that. All right, so we're going to say for, and we're going to say resource in global dot player inventory, because we are collecting and should be adding it back into the player inventory. We're going to go ahead, first off, we're going to add +1 to our current 1, which is going to help determine where we are. Then we're going to have an if statement, and we're going to say if our resource, first of all, does not equal null, all right, which of course means there's something there, and our resource item number 0, which is the name, if the name equals type of block and resource 1, which is the value, is less than 99, okay? Because we don't want to be adding it if it's, of course, less than 99, okay? So if it's all that, then we can go ahead and do a global, make sure it's capital G, global dot player inventory. And then we are going to be looking for, of course, the current one that we have, which is this one here. This is helping us, of course, locate where it is, current 1. And then we find the value of it, which, if you remember, is a type of 1. Plus equals 1. All right, perfect. Now, because we've now added it, we can simply just do a queue_free, which will remove the current object in the game. And then we will also return out of the loop, so it won't continue to do that. All right, perfect. And that's it. Now we need the one that is specific for if there isn't any room. So basically, if we go through here and there isn't any blocks with less than 99, then we need to just make the next closest null value equal to 1. Okay? And we can do that simply by just redoing exactly what we did pretty much. So we'll go ahead. We're going to go ahead and do another var. And we're going to say current 1. And we'll just say 2 to keep it simple. Equals -1. And then, of course, we'll do that for resource in global dot player inventory. And then, of course, we'll do our current 1, 2 plus equals 1. And then we'll go ahead and do if resource equals null. All right, so the closest null value is what we're trying to find. If that is the case, then what we're simply going to do is a global dot player inventory, find that current 1, 2, which of course is going to be inside a set of brackets. And we are simply going to go ahead and just equal that to a new set of brackets of type of block, comma, 1. So we're recreating that new entry based on the closest null value, all right? And then we'll simply, again, do a queue_free, because we can now remove this object, and then we can also go ahead and run a return. Perfect. Awesome. And that should be everything for the script. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's go back to the 2D view. And looking good. All right, now that we have the dirt block complete, let's go ahead and set everything we need on the inspector. So select the main node, dirt resource, go to the inspector. Now we need to give it its specific name. So we have dirt resource here, so we are just simply going to put dirt right here. Okay, Awesome. So there we go. Now we need to do the same thing for the other ones. And again, we don't need to recreate this entirely. We can just go ahead and select Scene, New Inherited Scene. And then all we have to do is just select the main one, which is dirt resource.tscn. Select Open, and there we go. Awesome. So now we just need to change this to the specific other one. The next one we're going to use is going to be one of the items that we can get. So let's just do axe for this one. Okay. Enter that. Perfect. Go ahead, change the type of block to axe. Awesome. Let's go ahead, select the sprite we need. So this is going to be in, I think, items. Find the axe. I'm just going to use the axe iron. Let's take that, drag and drop it into the sprite, and there we go. Let's save that. Save it inside the resources folder, and there we go. Let's do the next one now. So go ahead, Scene, New Inherited Scene. Make sure you select the dirt resource. Open. Perfect. All right, so the next one we can do, let's do chest. This one's a little different just because it's not a specific sprite that we have. Let's go ahead and rename it first. I'm going to do chest. There we go. Inside the resource, change the type of block to chest. Perfect. Then for the sprite, we don't really have a specific sprite for this, so I think the best way to do this would be to go to the tiles and then simply go ahead and find the plank. Should be towards the bottom. Wood right here. It's like a wood plank, so wood.png. Let's put that right there. And then we can add other things to this sprite. So let's just right click, add child node, and let's simply just add a color rect. And there's other ways we could do this. You don't have to do this way. I just found this way to be one of the most easiest ways. And I'm simply just going to stretch this, or not stretch this, let's expand this if it would let me. We can just use the move tool, select the color rect. There we go. So in the middle, let's just go ahead, make that black. And then what we could do, or you know what, we'll make the middle part yellow, kind of like a keyhole. So let's locate yellow. There we go. Then we'll also take the color rect, Control D, move this one above it. We'll make this one black. And then we will simply go ahead, if it allows us to, we could shrink this a little bit more. Maybe move it up a bit. If it doesn't, we might have to make the button a little bigger. So let's go ahead and let's simply do this here. And let's select this one, move this one up. Could do that for there, perfect. And then for this one, like I was doing it earlier, let's just simply stretch this to each corner. Just like that, perfect, awesome. So that kind of gives us a little chest look, I like it. Remember, you can customize this however you like, but I think this works pretty well for what we're working with. So let's go ahead, make sure you had the chest for the type. Let's go ahead and save this. Save it in the resources folder, and there we go, awesome. Let's go ahead and do the next one. I'm going to close these up. Go to Scene, New Inherited Scene, select the dirt resource.tscn. Awesome. All right, this next one, let's go ahead and do the coal. Now, coal is not a block. If you wanted it to be the coal block, you could, but I think it looks a little better with one of the items. If you scroll down, you should see the ore coal.png. Let's take that, drag and drop it over here. Perfect. Select the main one. Change this here to coal. Perfect. Let's go ahead, save that, save it in the resources. If it doesn't like dirt, whoops, we didn't change the name. Make sure to add the name though. Go ahead, add coal there, enter. Then save that, coal underscore resource, perfect. All right, next one we're gonna do, let's do diamond. Let's go ahead, Scene, New Inherited Scene, select dirt again. Let's go ahead, find the diamond, drag and drop it in, change the type to diamond. Perfect. Change the name up here to diamond also. Diamond. There we go. Save that, save it in resources, and there we go. Awesome. All right. Now let's go ahead and do iron. Pretty easy one also. Let's go ahead, make sure you're selecting the main one, which is the dirt. Let's go ahead, change the name. Let's go ahead, do iron. Change the type to iron as well. Awesome. Let's go ahead, find the iron ore. So ore, iron. Let's go ahead, grab that, paste it in there, save that, and there we go. Perfect. All right, so we have diamond, coal, iron. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Let's do mushroom now. Scene, new inherited scene. Select dirt resource. Let's go ahead, let's find the mushroom, which I think is going to be in the one below, the tiles. Yep, there we go. Mushroom underscore red. I'm going to paste that in there. Perfect. Now, because this one is a little bit like this, we could simply just move it up. And we might need to create another sprite for this, but we'll see. If we go ahead and do that there, change this to mushroom. Perfect. And then we go ahead, change the type to mushroom as well. Awesome. Save that. Save in here. Perfect. Now just to double check to make sure that didn't move everything, let's select another one like dirt, and we're still good. Awesome. All right, so we have the mushroom resource. Perfect. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Let's do another one of the tools. Let's go ahead and scene, new inherited scene. Let's go ahead, dirt resource. Let's just go ahead and let's do the pickaxe. So let's go ahead, change the name. Pickaxe. Perfect. Change the type. Pickaxe here. Awesome. Go to the sprite 2D. Let's go back up to the tools. Here's the pickaxe iron. There we go. There we go. Perfect. All right, everything should be the same. Awesome. Save that. Pickaxe resource. Awesome. All right, now let's go ahead. Let's do the seed next. Scene, new inherited scene. Select the dirt resource. Let's go ahead, change the name to seed. Perfect. Change the type of block to seed. Here we go. Now let's locate the seed. This should be right here, seed.png. Drag and drop it in. Perfect. Now if you wanted to make this bigger, you totally could. I'm just going to make it a little bigger. Let's go ahead and just simply do that. And whoopsie. Do that, and then maybe just move it on over a bit. There we go. Save that. Seed resource.tscn. Go ahead, double check, make sure that didn't affect everything else, which it didn't. Perfect. All right, so we have the seed. Now let's go ahead, let's do the shovel next. New inherited scene. Let's go ahead, select the dirt resource. Let's go ahead and let's change this. Let's change this to shovel. Or let's do lowercase for everything. Shovel, perfect. Let's go ahead, change the type of block to shovel. There we go. Let's go ahead for the sprite. Let's find the shovel iron, drag and drop it in. Perfect. Let's go ahead, save those changes. Shovel underscore resource. There we go. Perfect. All right, so we have the shovel now. Let's go ahead and do another block. Let's go to scene, new inherited scene. Select the dirt resource. Let's go ahead and do the stone. So we'll do stone. There we go. Let's go ahead, change the type, stone. And let's go ahead, change the actual image. If you scroll on down, you should see a stone block. Should be right here, stone.png. There we go. Save that. Stone resource, perfect. All right, then we're gonna go ahead. So we have stone, now we just need torch and then wood. Let's do wood next. So let's go ahead, new inherited scene, select dirt resource, open that up. For the wood, we're just gonna use a wood trunk, or honestly, we could even use this trunk top. I think it looks a little better. Let's drag and drop that there. Let's go ahead and just call this wood. There we go. And let's go ahead, change the type over here to wood as well. Perfect. Save that. Wood resource.tscn. Perfect. Awesome. All right, I think we're looking pretty good for the most part. Now we just need the torch. Let's go ahead, new inherited scene, dirt resource, tscn. All right, so this one's going to be also a little bit different. So let's go ahead and we're going to make this wood. So let's go ahead and find the wood plank again, the wood.png. Drag and drop it in. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make this look like a torch because there is no current torch object. So we'll do something like that. Maybe we'll make it a little shorter. There we go. Let's go ahead and rotate it like 45 degrees. Perfect. Let's move it a little bit. There we go. And let's change the name. Let's simply call this torch. Perfect. Type of block. Let's do torch again for that. Awesome. And now we just need the little flame. And what we could do simply is let's go ahead, child node, let's add a sprite 2D. And let's go up to, I think we should use this little one here, or not this one. Let's use grass1.png to make a little flame with this. There we go. Let's bring that in. We will move it on up. We might have to make it a little bigger because it's probably really small or not looking that good. Let's go ahead and expand the sides a little bit and a little bit over there. Doesn't need to be perfect. We just want it to kind of represent a torch. And let's see how that looks. Maybe a little closer up. Perfect. All right. Now that's green. That's not really representing a torch that's on fire. So let's go ahead and add something for this. Let's add a color rect right below it. And let's go ahead and simply just put this over the green one like that. Change this color to like an orange. You could do red if you want to. It's up to you. And what we're going to do, select the sprite 2D here. Go to the visibility and change the clip children to clip and draw. And there we go. Now that looks like a pretty good torch to me. Awesome. Again, you can always customize it to make it look like however you want. I think it looks pretty good for the most part, to be honest. We could make it go a little more perfect like this if we wanted to. It's kind of up to you, but I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit more over here like that. Let's see how that looks. A little better, maybe a little bit more over here. There we go. I like that. Awesome. All right. Perfect. And that's going to be the torch. Make sure we have the type of block set to torch and the name. Let's go ahead, save that. Torch_resource. Perfect. Awesome. And I think that should be all the resources. If we ever missed one, then we can always go back and create it. But I think this should be everything. Let's go check the resource folder. Open that up. We should have the axe, the chest, coal, diamond, dirt, iron, mushroom, pickaxe, seed, shovel, stone, torch, and wood. Perfect. Awesome. Save everything you got. Let's go back to the main world, and you can close out all these for now. Eventually, we might open some up for some testing, but I think we will be okay if we just close these out. If you wanted to add more resources, you totally could as well. That's completely up to you. But I think we're looking good for what we got. Awesome. All right, so far so good. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the dirt block. We're going to start off creating a new node for the dirt block. Then we're going to go ahead and add some sprites and specific collisions for the block. Last but not least, we're also going to create a static body and a timer for the block's future functions. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So similar to the resource, we are going to create the dirt block first and then be able to duplicate it for most of the other types of blocks. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new scene for this. We're going to do new scene. Now this is going to be a sprite 2D for the main node of it. Perfect. Let's rename it. We're simply going to call this dirt, capital B block. Awesome. All right, let's save that. Let's put this inside of our blocks folder. Perfect. Save it in there. Awesome. All right. So we're going to go ahead and add everything we need here. So we're going to be adding a couple different things for this. First thing, of course, we need is the actual sprite. Let's go ahead and find the dirt block. So that's gravel dirt. If we go back up, we should see just dirt.png. Let's take that, drag and drop it in. There we go. Perfect. All right. Now because the scaling is a little different here, we're going to have to, of course, adjust it. It's of course very big, but we don't want it to be that big. So let's go to transform. And I think a good size for this is 0.2 for X and Y. Perfect. Awesome. All right, so that's going to be for the actual dirt block sprite. We might adjust some other things later, but I think this will be okay for what we're working with. We might, though, need to go ahead and to make it a little more clear, you can simply go to texture, change filter to, let's just do nearest so it's a little more clear. Awesome. And then I think for now we can leave everything the same. All right, so now inside of it, though, we're going to need a couple different collisions. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's create the first collision, and instead of just giving a default one, let's just go ahead and give it an area 2D. Just to keep it more organized, this will be the default base one. We're going to add a collision shape in there. Give it a square or rectangle. Let's zoom in a bit, and then what we're going to do is simply just stretch this out to be a size of it. All right, should be that. Okay, perfect, awesome. All right, so now that we have that one, we'll just leave the name as Area 2D. The one below it, this is going to be kind of like the sensor for above to make sure there's something on top of it or not on top of it. So let's go ahead, let's add another Area 2D. Let's just call this, we could call this above dirt. So let's get rid of that. Let's do above dirt. Now, why are we adding it specifically for the dirt? Well, that's because we do not want the dirt block, if it's ever on the top, just to be a plain dirt block. We want it to be the one with a little bit of grass on the top, okay? But if, of course, it isn't and it's just underneath it and there's stuff on top of it, we will transfer it back to the regular dirt one, all right? Now, this is the only block that's really going to do that. There's going to be some differences between the nature stuff, like the weeds and the mushroom and the trees, but we'll get to that eventually, all right? Let's go ahead and add the collision shape, though. There we go. Let's go ahead, give it a shape of a rectangle. Now this rectangle is going to be not nearly as big, but we want it to basically just sense what is above it. So we're going to have one about this size, and we're actually going to take that, and we're just simply going to move it on up. Well, make sure you're moving the middle part, not the sides. If it doesn't let you, you might just have to use the corners, like it is for me. So I'm just going to do that there, and then I'm going to do this here, okay? So basically, like I said, this is going to detect if something is above it, but not big enough where basically something is too high. So this is good enough if you place it like that. You could go a little lower here too if you wanted to. Perfect. All right, awesome. All right, now we need the actual sprites though for the dirt and the grass. We're gonna have a switch for that. So let's go ahead, add child node, sprite 2D. And similar to what we did with the dirt block, we need the dirt grass and then just the regular dirt. Let's do the regular dirt first. Perfect. It's going to be the same size. We can turn that off for now. Let's go ahead and rename this just dirt. Perfect. And then we can go ahead, select it, Control D, change it out with the dirt underscore grass.png. Turn it on to see and make sure it looks good. Yep. Rename it. We're just going to call it grass. Okay. Awesome. Now this switch is only going to be active, of course, when we have things in the script adjusting it. All right, awesome. So we have everything there. Now we just need the actual static body so the player doesn't walk through it. So let's add that real quick. Static body 2D. Then we need to add the collision shape. Let's go ahead, collision shape, perfect. And let's go ahead, do what we did before. Simply go ahead, add that rectangle. And this will be the same size as the block. Let's go ahead and do that there, perfect. And then also over here, nice. There we go. Now we just need the timer, so let's go ahead, add that timer. This timer is going to basically help it determine whether or not it's getting hit. We're just adding a little bit of delay with this, so we're going to say timer, and we're just going to call it getting hit. Okay, awesome. And let me double check the settings we need for the getting hit timer. Let's go ahead, let's do a 3-second wait time. And then we're going to go ahead and do a one shot. All right, perfect. Awesome. Now we need to add some signals here, or not some signals, some groups. So let's go ahead and we're going to add a group to the one here, area above dirt. We're going to go ahead, add node, groups, and we're not going to adjust this one yet. We might add it later for some other ones, but we're going to give it block. Go ahead and turn that off though for now. And then for the second area 2D, the one that's on the top, that will be the main block one. So let's go ahead and select that one. This one will have the block attached. Okay, perfect. Awesome. All right. And I think we should be okay there. I don't think we need to adjust anything else there. We might add a simple one to this one though, just to be sure. So you can add block there if you want to, that's up to you. But I think we should be okay. So make sure you have everything for that. Let's go ahead and let's save that. Perfect. Let's add the new script because in the next section, we're going to create the block script. You can get rid of the dirt underscore and just leave block.gd. Perfect. Save that, and there we go. All right, so in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the block script. We're going to make sure we have the new script created for all the different blocks. We're going to go ahead and add some variables to keep track of all the block stats and producible resources. We're also then going to create some functions for the block actions, such as getting destroyed. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started creating the block script. So we already have the script up and ready. Let's go ahead, start from scratch by getting rid of everything in here. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and add some variables first. First thing we're going to do is we are going to add a variable that is going to be a bool representing if the current is on grass or is grass top. All right, meaning of course if we should have the grass turned on or off. All right, so we should do is grass underscore top equals true starting off. Then below it, we're going to have another variable. We're going to say timer underscore up underscore to underscore make. So basically we'll have a little bit of a timer to determine whether or not we should make it, which at first we'll always set it to false. Okay, perfect. Then we're also going to have a couple exports here. These are going to help determine which block it currently is, just like we did with the resource. So we're going to do an @export variable. We're going to say block health first, because each block is determinedly going to have different styles of health. Like the dirt block will be weaker than the stone block, and then depending on what you want to set for the other ones, you can do that here. So we'll do a float, and at first we'll always equal this to 0. All right. We're going to have another @export. This one here is going to represent the lower block health, so we'll do variable lower underscore block underscore health. And the reason we're doing this is it just helps the calculation. So if you want to set something different, it'll know exactly what to take away and then add back, of course, because remember, they're all going to be different. So we have to have a specific calculation to do this for us. You'll see how it's done once we get into the function. Then we're also going to need another variable that's going to represent the default health. So we'll do variable health. And then we'll go ahead, do float, and then equal this to 0 starting off. All right, awesome. Last export down here, we'll do @export. This one is going to be the type, so we'll say type underscore of underscore block, okay? And we'll simply set this to a string value, and we'll go ahead and give it a default, which is just going to be NA. All right, awesome, perfect. Next up, we'll have all the resources, so we can go ahead and do resources here. Then we're going to go ahead and do a bunch of onreadies for each type of resource. There is quite a bit, but luckily we can just copy and paste once we do the first one. So let's do @onReady, because we know we already have it existing. So we'll do @ready. We'll call this dirt underscore resource. This will go ahead and equal a preload. And then inside of it, we'll give it some quotes. And then we are looking for that dirt resource we have. Make sure it's not the dirt block. Make sure it's the dirt resource. All right, perfect. Now what we can do is simply just copy this whole thing, paste it below. Instead of this one here being dirt, let's go ahead and just do the stone one. So we'll say stone resource. And then in here, we are looking for stone resource.tscn. So we'll type in st and stone resource.tscn should pop up. Just click it and remove the end part, and you should be all set. Awesome. Let's go ahead, copy that line, paste it below. Next up, we're going to go ahead and do the col. So let's go ahead, do col. Let's go ahead and locate the right one. So we're going to do col resource.tscn. Take away that extra added part. Perfect. And I think a faster way to do this would just to be take out the entire quoted marks and re-put it in. Let's try that below. So we have col resources here, and we are going to be doing, let's just do iron next. So let's do iron iron, perfect. And then, like I said before, we should just make this empty. So let's take away this whole thing here. What we'll do is we'll just simply copy this whole thing like this. And then in the inside, all we have to do is now add 2 quotes and look for IR for iron. And we will locate iron resource. There it is. Perfect. And then we can simply underneath it paste that. Change that first part to diamond resource, so diamond. Inside the preload, type in diamond. Diamond resource, TSCN, perfect. Paste it below. Awesome. Now we're going to go ahead. We have diamond. Now we can do the seed. So let's do seed. Inside the preload, double quotes, type in seed. Locate seed underscore resource.tscn. Perfect. Next one, let's do mushroom. Let's go ahead and do mushroom here. Perfect. Double quotes inside. Type in mushroom, select it. Perfect. Awesome. Paste it below. Next one we're going to do is for the torch. Let's go ahead, do torch. Torch. Inside of here, let's go ahead, type in T for torch, locate torch resource, and there we go. Awesome. Next one up, let's go ahead, let's do the chest resource now. So let's go ahead, do chest. Double quotes in the inside of the parentheses, CH, chest resource, there we go. Perfect. Now we just need one more. The last collectible resource, we're going to go ahead, or droppable resource for the blocks, we're going to do wood. And then inside the preload, we will go ahead, double quote, wood, W, perfect, awesome. All right, and that's going to be all of our variables for this block script, okay? There's going to be other scripts we're going to create for other types of blocks, but the default basic ones will all be using this script. So let's save that real quick, and looking good. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So now that we have all of variables, let's start off creating some of our signals for our area 2Ds, all right? So let's go ahead and do our area entered for our dirt above first. So let's select this one here. Let's go ahead and do the entered one. So let's go ahead, go to signal, area entered, select the main script, perfect. All right, so in here, we're gonna be looking for a couple things. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and do an if statement and say if area dot is underscore in underscore group. And we are going to be looking for specifically if it's in the group of block. We're also going to have an and here, and we're going to make sure the type of block is equal to dirt, okay? Perfect. Once you have that there, inside of here, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to go ahead and set the dirt block to true. So we're going to take dirt block, drag and drop it into here. We're going to do a dot visible. And then go ahead, just equal that to true. And then below that, we're going to go ahead, do grass, drag and drop. We're going to do a dot visible. And this time we're going to set this equal to false. Okay, perfect. And then below that, we're simply going to set is grass top equal to false. Now we pretty much need the opposite here, but because there's different types of things such as grass, and mushrooms and even trees, we don't necessarily want to count those as a block above. So to do that, we're simply going to copy this whole if statement here, and then below we're going to paste it, still inside that area entered. This time we're going to be looking for if it is plant, okay? So if it's plant, then what we're going to do is we're going to turn off this dirt one here, but we are going to go ahead and make the grass one equal true, okay? Because we do want the grass one to be visible even if there are weeds, grass, or even trees or mushrooms on there. Okay, perfect. So make sure you have that there. Now let's go ahead and do the exited one. So select area exited, connect it. Right below, we're going to go ahead, copy this whole line here as well, the if statement we created about if it's a block, and we're going to simply paste that. And what we're going to do is we're kind of going to reverse it. So we're going to go ahead and take what we had in the second one, for the dirt equaling false, but the grass equaling true, and the is grass top equals true. Simply just paste that in below. And there we go. Awesome. So basically, if there's a block above it inside the area entered, then we are going to go ahead and make it into a dirt. But if there's anything above it, a block, or anything that is not a plant, then we're going to go ahead and make it into grass. Okay, awesome. So make sure you have all that there. That'll help determine whether or not, of course, we have the dirt block on or the grass block on. Okay, awesome. Now let's go ahead and do the actual getting hit by something. So let's go ahead and do that below. That's going to be our regular area 2D. So let's select the top area 2D right here. Select area entered, connect it to the main script. I'm going to clean it up right here. All right. So what we're going to do in here is a couple things. The first thing we're going to do is determine if it is getting hit by the hitting block. Okay. So let's just copy one of the ifs we have above it, paste it in, but instead of block, we're going to be looking for a group called hitting, in which we are going to attach to something for the player. All right, doesn't exist yet, but this is what is going to cause that hitting to happen. So if the hitting area is running into it, then we're going to check a couple things. First thing is the global. First, if global dot item in use, and we're going to say if it equals double quotes shovel and type of block equals dirt, because we want to give kind of like a bonus effect to the shovel if the block is dirt. So like basically adding some speed to it, because we should be able to get through dirt a lot faster with the shovel compared to something else. Okay, so in here, to add that little bonus, what we're going to do is we're simply going to set our current health equal to our lower block health. Okay, awesome. So that's what's going to happen if we have a shovel in use and this is a dirt block. So let's copy this whole thing here again, paste it in right beneath it. Instead of an if though, we're going to do an elif, because we only want it to happen once and then continue on. This time we're going to do elif, and we're going to be looking for whether or not it is a axe. Okay, and if it's an axe and the other dirt or the other type of block that we can place is a chest, which is a wooden chest, we're going to have that there, and we're going to get the bonus effect if it is that. Okay, awesome. So there you go. Now let's go ahead and do the next one. Let's go below, paste the elif. This time we're going to say if it's stone. So let's go ahead and do pickaxe here. If the pickaxe is hitting it and it is type of stone, then we will give it that lower health. Okay, perfect. And then of course we need the final thing, which is else. If any other thing happens, we're going to have the else. And what we're going to do is we're just simply going to set that health equal to block health. Okay, basically saying, hey, if we get bonuses, we're going to do these things here, but if not, we're simply just going to equal it to the regular health. Okay, awesome. All right, so now that we have all that, then we can go ahead and start the timer. So outside of all the if else's, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start our timer. So select time getting hit, paste right there. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a dot wait time, and we're going to make that equal to the health that is newly calculated, determining on the things above. We're also going to go ahead and start it. So go ahead, drag and drop it, do a dot start. Okay, perfect. Awesome. All right, and then the last thing, this is just a little safety check. We're going to say if area dot is in group. We're going to go ahead and just look for specifically none, just in case. If it is none, then we're just simply going to set everything to default. And we can do that by simply going ahead and doing a timer here, pasting it here. Instead of starting it, we're just going to do stop. Oops, make sure you put stop there, not start. Stop. And then we're also going to reset the health. So we're going to go ahead, copy the timer getting hit, paste it in right below. And instead of health, we're going to reset it, which we have to set it back to just the regular block health. All right, perfect. And that's going to be everything we need to initiate the hitting if the hitting box is attacking it. Okay, perfect. Save all that. I'm going to get rid of these here, and looking good. All right, next function we're going to do, this is going to be the timer signal. So let's go ahead, select the getting hit timer. Make sure you are selecting node, signals, select timeout, connect it, and there we go. All right, so this is going to be the actual destruction of the block and the initiation of the new resource being created. So we're going to have a couple things in here. The first thing we need to do though is we need to make sure this is not a bedrock. So let's go ahead, do if type of block equals double quotes bedrock, because we don't want bedrock to be destroyable. So if it equals, or we'll even say if it does not equal to make things simpler, then we can go ahead and start initiating the creation process. So let's go ahead, give it some room here. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we need to have a placeholder for the counter. So we're going to say current 1 equals -1. Then we're going to go ahead and say for block in global dot world map array, because that's where we're going to hold each block and its location. So for each one of those, we're going to go ahead and kind of loop through by doing current 1 plus equals 1, so we know where we are. And then we're going to go ahead and we're simply going to say if block 0, because that's going to be the location. We're going to have always the location and then the name. So we're going to say if location equals our global position, which is the current block that we currently are. Then we're simply going to go ahead and we're going to set our global dot world map array. And we're going to do a dot remove at, because we are now removing it, because remember, we're getting rid of it. And then we are going to use that current 1 right there. Perfect. So we are first removing it inside of our world map array. Once we do that, then we're going to go ahead, we're going to do another loop. So let's go back over here. We're going to say variable. We're going to say new underscore resource. And then we're going to go ahead, do an if type of block. We're going to say equals, double quotes, tree, because tree is going to be a little different. Tree. Then we have to go ahead and do a little while loop. We're going to go inside of here, simply create a new variable, call it I equals 1. And then underneath that, we'll do a while. And we're going to say if I is less than 3, then we're going to go ahead inside there. Don't forget your colon here. It's going to give you that little error. In the while loop, though, we're going to keep going. What we're going to do is we're simply going to say our new resource equals wood resource dot instantiate, which is going to create it entirely new. Then we need to tell where is it going to go. We're going to say add sibling. So we'll be in that same earth node that we have in our main node. So we'll put new resource there. And we need to tell it the actual global location. So we will say new resource dot global position equal that to our current global position. Perfect. And then of course we will go ahead and do I plus equals 1. And then underneath there we are going to say queue free. All right, not redraw, queue free. Perfect. Awesome. All right, so that's if it's a tree, but of course, if we have it as another type of block, we don't want it to do that. We want it to go ahead and say if type of block equals something like dirt. Then we're going to simply go ahead and set it to the dirt node. So we're going to say new resource equals dirt resource, not diamond, dirt resource dot instantiate. Perfect. And we're just going to go ahead and just copy and paste this a bunch of different times. So let's simply go ahead and just take this if statement and do it for each type of variable. So let's go ahead. Next one will be the stone. So let's type in stone. Perfect. And then over here, let's do stone resource. Perfect. Let's go ahead, keep going. Paste this in here. Next one we'll do is coal. Let's go ahead, do coal. And then here we'll go ahead, do coal resource. Perfect. Next one. We'll go ahead, let's do iron. Iron. And then we're going to say iron resource. Perfect. Next one up. Let's go ahead, make sure it's positioned correctly. We're going to do diamond. So go ahead, do diamond resource. And then here, let's go ahead, diamond resource. Oopsie, this one is not diamond resource. It's just going to be diamond. Unless you originally made it like that. But I think it's a little easier to do it this way. Next up, we're going to go ahead. Let's do plant. And then we're going to go ahead. We're going to say seed resource for this. Perfect. Copy that. paste the next thing below. Then we're going to go ahead, let's do mushroom. So mushroom, change it here to mushroom resource. Perfect. Then we're going to go ahead below that, paste the whole thing though, make sure to copy it. So we have mushroom, we also need torch. Let's go ahead and do torch. And then do torch resource. Perfect. And then the last one, which should be the chest resource. Let's copy that, paste below. Let's go ahead and do chest. And then we're going to go ahead, type in chest resource here. Perfect. Awesome. All right. And chest resource is going to be a little different. That's because we have a different variable for that. If you remember, we need to initiate that removed chest, which I don't think we have created yet, but we can create that next. Removed underscore saved underscore chests. You can just do chest. That'll stay errored for a second. Once we have that there though, then we can simply go ahead underneath the if statement. So now we have all the ifs we need. Now we're going to say add sibling. Just like we did for the tree one, we're going to add sibling of the new resource. And then we're simply going to go ahead, new resource, dot global position. And then we're going to simply set it equal to our global position. There we go, perfect. And then the last thing to do, of course, is to queue free. Go ahead and make that there. Now all we need to do, of course, is we need to create that function here. And then we might have one more entered, but we'll make that in just a bit. That's going to be everything though for this function on timer getting hit. So when the timer hits, it's going to initiate this and do everything it needs to do here. But of course, we need to get this other function created. So let's do function. And let's go ahead, paste that there. And now for the removed save chests, it's pretty easy. We're just going to loop through basically. So we're going to do variable current underscore 1 equal that to -1. Then we're going to go ahead, do for chests, because there's multiple chests in there, in global dot, and I think we called it chests items. There we go. We'll of course at +1 to the current one. So we're going to +1 to this. And then of course we're going to have our if statement. We'll say if chests bracket 0, which is of course the position, equals the global position, which is the current block we have. Then we're simply going to go ahead and we are going to do another global dot chests items dot remove at. We are going to remove at that current one we have. All right, so let's copy the current one. Whoopsie daisy. Paste that in. And then of course we can get out of this loop by simply doing a return. Perfect. So that's going to be everything we need in that remove chests. Perfect. All right, let's wrap this script up with 2 more small functions. Let's go ahead and do our regular area entered. This is going to be for our area 2D. Let's go ahead and select that. Area 2D. Yeah, it'll be this one. Or let me double check that. It might not be this one, but we could technically add one for that. I thought we already did add one for that. Area entered. Area, oh no, we need area exited, that's why. Okay, we have area entered, but we also need area exited. We could have put this underneath, I think we just forgot. So we have area entered, we need area exited. So just connect that there. So for area exited, we're kind of going to reverse a couple things. We're simply going to go ahead and just look for if the hitting leaves. So we're going to say if area dot is underscore in underscore group. Oops, it's easy. Group, double quotes, and we are going to say hitting, because if we are no longer hitting it, we need to initiate that, hey, it's no longer being destroyed. So to simply do that, we're just going to stop the timer and reset it. So take that timer hit. We're going to do a dot stop. And then we're also going to go ahead and reset it. So take that again. And this time we're going to do a dot wait time. And then just simply equal that to our block health. All right, perfect. Then we're also going to do the none one. So same thing, copy the whole thing, paste it below, make sure to backspace it. Simply set this here to none. And then we're going to go ahead and reset it to the same thing we did above. Perfect. So that's going to be everything in the exited, all right? And then the last thing we need to do is, of course, we need to set the process. So let's go ahead and do that. This is just going to help kind of update certain things. So let's do function underscore process. And we're simply going to have one thing in here and say if type of block equals double quotes dirt. Then we're simply going to go ahead and we're going to set our area 2D above, which is this one here, above dirt. We're going to do a dot add to group. And we're going to add it to that group of above dirt, okay? And you'll see why we're doing this in the future. This is just kind of going to help us plant things that we need to, because we don't want to be able to plant mushrooms or trees or even grass if there isn't like a spot above the dirt for it, okay? So you'll see why we have this once we get into the nature creation, all right? But so far things are looking good. You can always check out the source code if you get stuck, no worries. Let's save that. Let's go back to 2D. We do have to set a couple things though. If you go to the inspector and select dirt block, remember now we have the block health and we also have the other health. So let's go ahead and set everything we need. What I usually do is I set the block health to something like 4. And then I'll also go ahead and set the lower block health to 1. All right, so let's do that. And then don't forget the type of block is no longer NA. It is going to be type of dirt, all lowercase. Perfect. Awesome. Go ahead and save that and looking good. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create all the basic blocks. We're going to start off creating a new node for each basic block type. Then we're going to go ahead and ensure all the specific sprites are set. Then we're going to go ahead and make sure all the signals are set correctly. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started creating each block type. So we already have the first one here created, which is the dirt block. So all we really need to do is go ahead and create copies of this. So let's simply go to scene, new inherited scene. Go ahead, select dirt underscore block.tscn, hit open, and there we go. Awesome. So let's go ahead and start creating this. The next block I'm going to create is going to be the bedrock block. So let's do bedrock block. And let's go ahead, enter that. Then we can also go ahead and set everything we need in the main node, such as the block health and lower block health. But if you remember, we have a specific if else that says if it's a bedrock type, then it won't be destroyed. So it doesn't really matter what you set those to above. So let's go ahead and do bedrock here. Perfect. And then all we have to do is just change the main node. So from this dirt color, let's find the bedrock color. You scroll on down, you should see a darker colored one. I don't know if it's specifically named bedrock, but it is a darker stone, which we can just use the graystone.png. So let's take that, simply drag and drop it, and there we go. Awesome. All right, perfect. So let's save that. Make sure to save it in the blocks folder. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead. Let's go to scene, new and inherited scene. Select the dirt block, open. All right, so this one here, let's go ahead and do the chest block. So let's go ahead, just replace this with chest. You can add an underscore if you want to, but I'm just gonna leave it like this. It'll automatically do the underscore. So let's do chest block. Then we have to, of course, change the type of block. I'm gonna do chest. If you wanted to make the block health and lower block health be different than what it is currently, you can, but I'm just gonna leave it the same. But I will make sure the chest is there. Awesome. Now for the chest, eventually we're gonna add specific UI things we can do for it. But for now, we're just gonna create the basic version of it, which is gonna be like every other block, all right? But we do, though, need to add what we need for this. So we know that the main one here has to be that wood planks block. So let's locate that. Should be towards the bottom. Here it is, wood.png. Let's take that, drag and drop it in. There we go. Then we need to give it the keyhole. So let's go ahead. Let's right-click on here, add child node, and simply go ahead, and we're going to add a color rect. And we're going to go ahead, move this in the middle. We might need to adjust the size if it doesn't directly go in the middle. Looks like it does. Let's change this to yellow. Perfect. Then let's go ahead, duplicate this, put it inside of it. Simply select it. Change this one to black now. And you know what we might need to do? We might need to switch these around. So if you need to do that, simply take it and just switch it around. Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to stretch this one out all the way across. Shrink it a bit. And then we're going to take that color rect. Make sure you have the move tool selected. Just readjust it. Perfect. And there's our chest. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead. Let's save that. Save it in the blocks folder. Perfect. All right, now let's go ahead, go to scene. Let's do the next one. Select the original, which is dirtblock.tscm. Perfect. All right, so now let's go ahead. Let's do the coal one. So let's go ahead, locate the coal block, not the coal resource. There's two different ones here. You can pick whatever one you want. I'm going to go ahead and choose this one here. So let's drag and drop it in there. Perfect. Then, of course, change the name. Let's do coal block. Perfect. Don't forget to change the type of block here as well. I'm going to do coal. There we go. Awesome. All right, and that should be good for that one. Let's save it. Save it in the blocks folder. Perfect. Let's go ahead. Let's do the next one. We can go ahead and do the diamond one. So let's go ahead, scene, new inherited scene. Go ahead and select the dirt block. Open that up. All right. Now for this one, like I said before, we need to go ahead and find the diamond one. I'm going to use the more scrunched up version right here for the diamond. Let's take that, drop it in, rename it. Diamond block. Don't forget to change the type to diamond as well. Awesome. And there we go. Perfect. Save that. Save it in the blocks folder. Perfect. All right. Next up, let's go ahead and let's do the iron one. So let's go ahead. Scene. New inherited scene. Select the original, which is the dirt block. There we go. Let's go ahead. Change the name. Doesn't really matter what order you do this in, as long as we adjust everything we need to. I'm going to do iron here. And then find the iron you want to use. I think there's two different ones here. I'm just going to use this one here. Drag and drop it. There we go. Perfect. All right, so we have iron. What else do we need? We need a couple more. We need the regular stone, of course, so let's save this. Let's do the next one, new inherited scene. Let's go ahead. Let's do the dirt block. Let's do stone block now. There we go. Change the type to stone. Go ahead, find the stone block you want to use. I'm going to use stone.png. Drag and drop it in, and there we go. Let's save that. Stone block. Perfect. All right, what else do we need? We need, of course, we have dirt, we have stone. Let's see, dirt, bedrock, chest, coal, diamond, iron, stone. Now I think we might just need the other ones that are buildables or placeables, like the nature ones. Let's do the stone one, or no, let's do the torch one real quick. Let's go ahead. New inherited scene, dirtblock.tscm. Let's go ahead and just call this torch block. Now this one we're going to have to build it a little bit, just like we did with the chest one. So let's go ahead and select the main node here, torch block. We don't really want it to have a background block. If you wanted it, you could, but I don't necessarily want that. So I'm going to go ahead into the visibility, self-modulate, make it completely invisible. Perfect. Then we just need to build the simple little torch. Let's go ahead, add child node. Let's go ahead and add a sprite 2D. Let's go ahead and find the wood plank. Let's go ahead and do wood plank here. And I'm simply going to shrink this into the size that I want for the torch. It's up to you how you want to make it. I'm just going to make it somewhat floating a bit. If you wanted to make it completely on the ground, you could. It's kind of up to you, but I kind of like the effect of it floating a bit. And then down a little bit here. Perfect. Then we're going to have to go ahead, duplicate the sprite 2D. I'm going to put this inside of it. I'm going to go find that little piece of grass that we used that represents a flame. So that's grass1.png. There we go. I'm going to move it on up. And then I'm going to zoom in a bit, shrink it a bit, Again, it's always up to you how you want to customize this. I'm just going to make it relatively the same as the resource one we made. It's okay if it's a little different as long as it fits the picture. We should be all set. I'm going to go in a little bit and then possibly over a little bit if I can. If you need to adjust it perfectly, I would maybe stretch this out a little bit on the top so it just goes into it. If it doesn't, that's okay. Stretch it down. There we go. If it's a little bit like that, you could either try to do it like this and then like that. If you need to move it over specifically, you can go to transform and then just move it from the position. So we could do like let's see what a -1 looks like. Might need to do -2. Let's go ahead and just try 5. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. Awesome. All right. And then what we're going to do is, of course, make this an orange. So let's go ahead on that. Right click, color rect, cover the green. Simply go ahead, change this color to a orange or a red, whatever color you kind of want. Go to the Sprite 2D that it's inside of. Go to visibility and simply select clip children, clip and draw, and there we go. Awesome. Eventually we'll add an actual light on this torch, but we will get to that once we create that for the player because it's going to be pretty much the same light. But I think that looks pretty good for the torch. So again, make sure you added the type. Looks like I did not. It's going to be torch. And there we go. Awesome. Let's go ahead, save that. Torch block, TSCN. Perfect. All right, we got the torch. What else do we need? I think we're going to need the weeds and then also not the diamond, we're going to need the mushroom. All right, so let's go ahead. New inherited scene. Dirt block again. .tscn. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to make this, we can just call it plants. That's fine. Plants block. This one is going to be just the kind of like grass plant. Let's go ahead. Maybe we can use grass4.png. You can use whichever one you want. That looks pretty good. All right, and this one, let's go ahead. Let's call this, I think we're calling it plant, is the regular one. If you want to double check, you can simply go inside the script, scroll back up to what we called it. I think it was, let's see, scrolling down a little, yep, plant. Oh, that's the area body, but if we scroll down, here we go. Plant, yep, make sure you have it as plant, just like that. So let's go ahead, leave it as plant. And then we do, though, need to add the plant area because it is also a plant. So go to the node, groups, and I think it's going to be, let me double check on mine because I'm pretty sure we did it that way. We need to determine whether or not it is a plant and also a block. Yep, so go to the main area 2D. We're going to simply add a new one, call it plant, enter, and there we go. Perfect. We might adjust this later, but I think this works pretty well. So there we go. We'll have plant with that. Awesome. All right. And then we can simply go ahead and just save that. Save. Perfect. Then we need the mushroom. So let's go ahead. Scene, new inherited scene, dirt block.tscn. Let's go ahead, call this mushroom block. Mushroom block. Go ahead, change the original type to mushroom. Perfect. Could add the area 2D for it as well. Make sure to go to the groups, nodes, there we go. And then simply add that in just like we did with the plants. So we're going to do plant again because this is a type plant. There we go, perfect. All right, now we need the actual image. And I don't think if we make the center one, it's going to work. So we might have to make it a little lower, and I'll show you how to do that. Let's find the mushroom first, though. There it is. Let's use the red one. And let's drop it here. Nope, that looks like it works. I was worried it was going to be in the middle, but it looks like it's fine on the bottom. Perfect. Awesome. Just don't forget the area 2D has to have that group for both the plants block and also the mushroom block. Save that. Save it in here. And perfect. Awesome. And we can double check to make sure we have all the blocks we're going to need simply by going to our current resources folder. So if we go to our resources, it's going to be right here, and open it up. We're not going to need a resource for the axe. We have one for the chest. We have one for the coal, diamond, dirt, iron, mushroom. Don't need one for the pickaxe. Seed resource, that's not a block. We don't need one for the shovel. We do need one for the stone, which we have. We do need one for the torch, which we have. And we don't need one for the wood because that's going to be a separate thing we're going to make in the next section specific for the tree. Okay? But so far, things are looking really good. Let's go ahead. Let's go back to the main world node. Save what we got. You can close out each block. And then, like I said, the next section, we're going to go ahead and create the tree. All right? Which is going to be somewhat of a block, but it's going to have a little bit of things different to it. All right, looking good. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the tree block. We're going to start off creating a new node for the tree block. Then we're going to go ahead and add 3 growth stages for the tree. Then we're going to go ahead and create a new script for all the tree's functionality of getting hit by the player and growing over time. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's get started creating the tree block. So let's go ahead and let's create a new node for this, a new scene. Let's go ahead and do new scene. We're going to go ahead, do other nodes, sprite 2D, just like we've done in the past. All right, and we are simply just going to call this tree because technically it's not really just a block. It's going to be able to be more than one. So let's go ahead, let's save that. We're going to put this in the natures folder. Perfect. Save that. Awesome. All right, so first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and pick the starting node for this. And I think the best way to do that would be to simply go ahead and not add something to this one, but instead make 3 different nodes for it. So let's right click, add child node. We're going to add another node 2D into this. All right, and we're going to call this tree L1 for level 1, which is basically the growth stage of 1. And then inside of this, we can go ahead now and add what we need. First thing we're going to add is simply going to be, again, another sprite 2D. And this sprite 2D, let's go ahead, pick the art we want to use, PNG, tiles, scroll down towards where we have the log block. And here we go. So we can use either a thinner one or we can use just the regular one. I am going to go ahead and use the thinner one, this one here, the trunkmid.png. Let's put that in there. Perfect. All right. And then, of course, we need to shrink this into size. So let's go ahead, select it, transform, 0.2 for X and 0.2 for Y. And you know what? Instead of doing the inner one here, what we could simply do to make things easier is just make the original one 0.2, so the one up here, we'll simply go ahead, just do 0.2, and then there you go, 0.2. Make sure this is still 1. Awesome. All right, perfect. And we can always adjust this later if we need to, but I think it'll be okay. All right, perfect. So now let's go ahead, and now we need one for the top part here, so let's go ahead and just duplicate this, Control D. Let's find the grass, or the leaves, there we go. Leaves transparent, let's add that. And this one here, I'm simply just going to put it right above. And this is going to be our level 1 tree. So when we first have a tree planted down, this is what it's going to look like. All right. Really simple, really basic. Doesn't really have the full length of the tree we want, but this will be okay for now for the level 1. All right. Awesome. All right. So that'll be the level 1 tree. Now, one thing we do need to do, though, is, of course, create the other levels, but we're also going to have to add an area 2D and a collision. So let's add that as well before we start the next levels. So area 2D. And then we're going to go ahead, add a collision shape. And this collision shape is going to change over time depending on how big the tree is. So let's go ahead, add the shape, which is this one right here. Awesome. And what we're going to do is just kind of center it up. So let's take that tree and we're simply going to go ahead and just center it simply here to here. Okay, awesome. Perfect. And with the script, we're going to make this thing grow so we don't need multiple collision shapes. We're just going to use one that changes over time. Okay, awesome. All right, we do, though, need to go ahead and select the area 2D, and we're going to go to node, and we're going to add some groups to this. We're going to add the block group because technically it's still a block. And then we're also going to go ahead, we're going to add the plant one as well because it is also a plant. And there we go. Awesome. All right, we're going to give it a timer as well. Let's go ahead. Let's add a timer. And this timer, we're just going to do a getting hit timer. So getting hit. And now we can complete the rest of the levels, okay? So this is the L1. Let's just go ahead and duplicate that for L2. Turn off the L1. For L2, we're simply just going to make it a little bit bigger. So let's go ahead and go to this one here. I'm going to simply use the move tool, Control D, and just move one up. We're going to go, let's just do 2 blocks up like that. And then we're going to take the grass block, or the leaves block. Make sure it is connected. There we go. And then we're going to go ahead, take that one, duplicate it. And we're just going to add more to it. Like if the tree was actually growing. Let's keep going over there. One over there. And then we'll do one more on the top. So from the middle, we'll go straight up. Awesome. And again, you can always customize this how you want. But I think this looks pretty good. Awesome. That's going to be the L2 tree. So let's go ahead. Let's duplicate it one more time. Control D. Awesome. Let's go ahead, turn on the L3. And let me double check what I made for the L3. Yep. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off the current leaves and just focus on the trunk. Let's go ahead and add 3 of these. So let's go ahead, Control D, bring it on up. Make sure it's still connected. And let's do another one. And let me check how many I did. I don't think I did too many more. I think I only did 3. Let's see, 1. Yep. Did 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, perfect. That's enough. Awesome. Then let's go ahead. Let's get the leaves. So let's go ahead and just a simple way to do it. I'm going to take away the other ones and just start from scratch. Let's take this guy here. Let's move it on up. And there we go. That's going to be the first one. Control D. Let's go ahead. Let's add another one like right here. And then let's do the other side. Let's do a layer above. And then we'll do one on the top. So we'll go ahead, put that in the middle, and just go right above. Awesome. And then there we go. Perfect. So that's going to be our level 3 tree. Okay, awesome. Let's close that there. Perfect. And just because this is not big enough for the other levels, remember that that is going to change over time with the script. Okay, but I think we're looking good so far. Now we just have to go ahead and create the script and we should be set. So let's select the main node tree, add it. We can keep it as tree.gd, hit create, save what you got, and there we go. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the script. So this is going to be very similar to the block script. It's going to have a lot of the same things, but a few differences just because of the growth. All right, so let's start off with a variable, and we're going to call it trees underscore growth underscore val for value, and we will start that off equaling it to 0. Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to create another variable. We're going to call this timer underscore up underscore to make, just like we did in the block script. And we are going to equal that to false starting off. Perfect. Then we're going to go ahead, add nat export. This is going to be variable block health. Equal that. Well, actually, instead of equaling it, we'll make it a type int, and then we will equal it to a 0 starting off. Create another at export, another variable. We're going to say type of block, which we know is tree, but just in case you eventually make other trees, you can do this the same. Type of block. And we're going to go ahead, type string, and equal that currently to NA. All right, awesome. And then we're going to have our last variable. This is going to be an @onReady. That's going to represent the wood we get once we destroy the tree. Wood underscore resource. And then we're going to go ahead and equal that to a preload. And we are looking for the wood underscore resource TSCN. Perfect. Awesome. That's going to be all the variables we need in here. Then we're going to go ahead and start our first function. This is going to handle pretty much the growth of the tree, which we are going to be using the underscore process function. First thing we're going to check is, of course, our values inside of our loop. So value in global dot world map array. And we're simply going to go ahead and, starting off, say if our value does not equal null and value 0, which is the global position, and value 1, which is the name. We need to make sure it's actually a tree, so we're going to do tree. And then we're also going to have it and we're going to be checking if the value 2, which is going to be the growth value that we will set, make sure it's 2, is less than 24. Now this value 2 is the growth value, and this growth value is actually just going to be a representation of how many hours the tree has been there. So basically, if it's less than a day, then it will be in growth stage 1, and then the next 24 hours will be growth stage 2, and then anything above the 2 days will be growth stage 3. Okay, that's just how I'm doing it. If you ever wanted to change that, you totally could. That's completely up to you, but this works pretty good as an example. Now, of course, if it is that, we need to turn off all the other tree L's. So we need tree L1 to be true. So let's drag that over. Let's do a dot visible, equal that to true. But then as for the other ones, we need to equal it to false. So let's go ahead. Let's do that for that one there. Let's copy the entire thing above, paste it in, say false. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for tree 3. Take that, paste it, and there we go. Awesome. Apart from that, like I said before, we need to adjust this area 2D, because remember, if this area 2D is growing for each one, we need to set it to each one. We want basically the collision shape to go as tall as each tree, because we're in the default one and we know this matches. We don't really have to change much for it here, but we are going to go ahead and simply take the area 2D. We're going to do a dot position, and we're simply just going to set this to what it currently is, which is a vector 2, and then we're going to go ahead and do a 0, 0. All right, because we're not moving it. If you remember, it's going to stay exactly where it is, but then we're also going to change the scale to what it currently is as well. So let's go ahead and do dot scale, and we're simply going to set that equal to our vector 2. And what it currently is set is 1, 1. And you can check that out by simply going to the area 2D itself, going to inspector, going to the transform, and you're going to see the scale right here is x1 and y1. Now we're going to adjust this as the tree grows, and you'll see that once we get to the next else if. So let's copy this whole line here, and we're going to simply paste this below. This time it's not going to be an if, it's going to be an elif. So there we go. But like I said before, we need to check whether or not it is in between that first day and second day. And we can do that over here. So we are going to go ahead and simply put a parenthesis around this and say value 2 this time is greater than or equal to 24. And value 2 is less than 48. All right, because that again, remember that's going to be the third day if it's anything greater than that, so we don't want to do that. So there you go, make sure you have that there. That's going to be for the second day. And if you guessed it, what we're going to have to do is, of course, make the first level one invisible, but the second one true. So let's turn this into false. And we're going to simply set the L2 to true. All right, perfect. And then what we're going to do is adjust what I did for the position and the scale for this one. So we currently have it set to 0, 0 for the position, but we're actually going to have to move it up a little bit, and we can view it in just a second. Let's just paste in what I have here, which fits pretty well if you copy the same style of the tree. So negative 62.775. And then for the scale, I did 1 and 1.96. And we can view this simply by going over here. Let's just take that number for the position, paste it in. That's the Y value. There we go. And then also take the scale. Let's take that 1 value there, paste it in for this. If it matches up with that, you can simply turn that off and change this back to 1, just like that. And if we go ahead and save this now, go back to 2D view. As you can see, it is now going to be in the correct position for the tree too. All right. If you wanted to adjust that, you would simply have to adjust it here and match it up with what you want in the script. All right, so I'm going to turn off that tree there. I'm going to go ahead back here. I'm going to reset each one of these back to the original, just like that. Perfect. Save it again. All right. Now for the next one, let's go ahead, copy this whole thing. And actually one thing to do also here is because it is up right here, what we're going to do is we're going to add one more thing here. After that area 2D, we are simply going to set our trees growth val. We are just going to equal that to our value and then our 2. Okay, awesome. And we forgot to do that for the other one above. That's just going to basically keep updating it. So let's go ahead and just update it there and put it there as well. Perfect. That's just going to help us keep track of it. All right, awesome. All right, let's go ahead and copy this whole thing, paste it below. Now this time it's going to be anything above the 48. So let's go ahead and let's go to this here. Let's get rid of this parenthesis right here, and then everything after, and including the and we had. And this time, like I said, we're going to be anything above or equal to, and it's going to be 48. All right. Perfect. Awesome. All right. There we go. There we go. Nice, nice. Then we're going to go ahead and we are simply going to change this to the correct one. So we have false for the second one now and true for the third one. Let's go ahead and do a true there. Perfect. And then for the positioning, what I found works best for the same style of the tree I used, I did negative 126.935 for the Y value of the position. And then for the scale, I kept X at 1. But I'm going to change the Y value to 2.94. Okay. Oopsie. Just like that. Awesome. And there we go. Awesome. And that should be everything in our process function. So let's save that. Perfect. Now we just need a couple area enters and also the getting hit timeout, which is similar again to the block one. So let's go ahead and do the area entered. So simply select area 2D, go to the node, signals, area entered, add it onto the main tree script. Let's add what we need in here. It's going to be pretty simple, similar, almost exactly similar to what we did before. So we can go ahead and simply actually go into the block.gd script, scroll on down, and it's really just going to be this here, what we have on the area 2D area exited. So let's go ahead and we're going to copy that. And then let's go back to our tree script. And then we're simply going to go ahead, paste this in right here. We might need to change a few things, but we should be okay for this. So instead of stop, we are going to go ahead and change that to start for our timer. So we're going to do .start. There we go. Make sure it's the same name though, or it's not going to know what it is. And then we're going to go ahead, and this one is going to be a stop equaling also block health. All right, but now we need the exited one. So again, let's go ahead, double click area exited, connect it, perfect. And then we're going to go ahead and we're simply going to paste in what we copied before, just like that. And then we can actually just leave almost everything the same, I'm pretty sure, yep, because we're stopping the timer, we're resetting the wait time, and we're keeping everything as is. Awesome. All right, looking good there, perfect. Now we just need the actual timeout. And again, it's going to be pretty similar to what we did in the block script. If we go to timer getting hit, select timeout, connect it, we'll have our connection there, perfect. And we could actually simply go ahead and just go back to the block.gd, scroll on up, and I think we're going to have everything we have right here. So if you wanted to, we could simply just copy everything on our timer here all the way, I think, to the Q free. We might change it a little bit. And honestly, we probably don't even need this if statement in here for this, because remember, we're never using this section of the tree in this. So let's just go ahead, and what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and copy this whole thing here. And before you leave this script, if you wanted to, you could simply take out this part right here for the tree. So let's just remove all that if right there and just simply do that. Perfect. Let's go back. Let's save this first. Then we'll go back to the tree. Simply go ahead and we'll simply just paste in everything we have right here. We don't really need the block script, the bedrock one, but then I have to reformat the whole thing, so I'm not going to worry about that. But I think we're looking good for this for the most part, because we have the start of it, we have the current one, the block in world map, current 1 plus 1 equals 1, if block type equals global position. Perfect. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove current 1. Perfect. New resource creation. We're looking for if it equals tree. If it does, then we're going to reset this var I equals 1. And then we're simply going to loop through for each one for new resource, wood, add sibling, new resource, global position, I plus 1, and then Q free. All right, perfect. Because, of course, we want to initiate a wood block for each growth stage. So if we have a small tree that we cut down, we only want 1 wood block. But if we have the one that's adult and all the way up, then we'll have 3. Okay. Again, we might adjust this down the road, but I think this works pretty well with what we're working for. I don't see a reason that we would adjust it currently, but if we need to, that's okay. I think one thing we could do, though, is adjust the position if we wanted to kind of make it fall from the top of it. So like if, for instance, if we are initiating wood blocks here, they're just going to spawn right here. But what if the tree itself is bigger? We want it to kind of fall down from the top. If you wanted to add that nice little effect, we could simply by going to the end of the 62 right here, and we could go ahead and do a simple plus vector 2 parentheses, and then we could do a 0 comma parentheses set I star symbol, which is timesing 0.5. All right, and then go ahead, close out the whole thing. So this will basically make it, for each time it goes around, it'll kind of higher it up a bit. If you wanted to make it higher, you could, but I think this is a nice little separation, because if you don't, there's a possibility that they'll kind of like spawn inside of each other, which is going to cause a big mess. But I think this will solve that little issue. Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead, let's save that. Perfect. Let's go back to 2D view. You can turn off the L1 if you want to, that's completely up to you. But I think so far we are looking pretty good. We might need to, though, adjust the timer. I don't know if we ever did that. I think if you select timer, go to inspector, just make sure that is a one shot, and then you can leave wait time as 1. Awesome. Save that, and looking good. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the earth script. Now this script is very important because it is going to be responsible for creating the world for our game. It not only will randomize the world creation, but it will also bring back any saved world we have. Now to start this off, we're going to create that script and attach it to the main earth node. Then we're going to add all the variables for the presetting blocks we just created, and of course some other placeholders for all the calculations. Then we're going to create a couple functions to randomize the new earth build and also return the saved one. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started with this script. I'm going to close out of the tree we were just on in the last section. I'm going to go ahead and select the earth node we have in our main world node. Then we're going to go ahead, add a script. You can leave the name as earth.gd, hit create, and here we go. All right, let's start off with the variables. So I'm going to get rid of everything here. Start from scratch. Let's go ahead and add the blocks first. So I'm going to go ahead, give a comment here for blocks. And these are going to be all add-on readies because we already have these created and we don't need to drag and drop them in. So let's do the first one as the dirt block. So let's go ahead, do dirt block equals preload, and we are looking for the dirt block. Make sure it's dirt block, not dirt resource. Perfect. And then we can simply just copy this whole thing, paste it right below. And to be a little faster, we could just simply remove this here, copy the whole thing, and just do it this way. Now we have the dirt block. Let's add the stone block next. So let's go ahead, stone block, double quotes, STO, stone block.tscn. Perfect. Next up, let's go ahead, let's do bedrock block. So we could do bedrock block and then double quotes, bedrock block tscn. Perfect. Right below it, let's do the next one. Let's go ahead and do chest block. So let's do chest block, double quotes, chest block. Perfect. Awesome. Let's do the next one. So we have this one here, which the next one I think is torch block. So let's do torch block. Perfect. Let's give it double quotes. Type in torch. There we go. Torch block. Perfect. Then we're going to go ahead and let's do the resources next. So let's go ahead and do resources. Then we're going to go ahead, do or you know what, let's just paste it. We can just do it that way. And then we'll do coal block. Let's go ahead. Let's do coal block, double quotes. Let's go ahead, coal block. There we go, TSCN. Awesome. Let's do the iron one next. Let's go ahead, iron block. Go ahead, double quotes. Iron block, TSCN. Perfect. Next one is the diamond block. Let's go ahead, diamond block. And then let's go ahead inside here, diamond block, TSCN. Perfect. Awesome. There we go. And then we need to do the nature things. So let's go ahead, hashtag nature, paste that in. Let's go ahead and we're simply going to call this one weeds, which is just basically the grass. Then let's go ahead and I think it was just plants block, TSCN. Perfect. Next up, let's go ahead. Let's do the tree one. So I'm going to paste this. Let's call this tree. Let's go ahead. Let's do tree, TSCN. Perfect. Next one, we're going to do the mushroom. Let's go ahead. Let's do mushroom. Just make sure you spell that right. Go ahead, double quotes. Mushroom block TSCN. Perfect. Awesome. All right, so that's going to be all of our on-readies. Now we just have a little placeholders for some calculations. We're going to go ahead, and I don't think we're going to use this, but we might. I'm just going to use the config and equal this to config file dot new. And again, we might not use this because I think we're just going to save everything directly using the global script, but I will have that there just in case. The next variable we're going to need is, of course, the block type. And we'll just leave that as a empty quotes for a placeholder. Then we're going to have new block, which is going to represent the new block we're creating. Don't need to give that a value. Or then we're going to go ahead and do variable nature underscore age. All right, and that's going to represent the nature age for the tree. Awesome. And there we go. Perfect. And that's going to be all of our variables. Make sure you got all those in there. Let's go ahead, save that, and looking good. All right, let's continue on to the next functions. So let's go ahead. Let's add a couple enters here. I want to center this up so we can see it pretty well. On 25, let's go ahead and create our first function. This is just going to be our ready function. So let's go ahead and create our ready function. All right. So the first thing we want to do in our ready function is have an await. And that's because we have to reload in certain values, which we are getting from our global.recover function, if you remember that. So we're basically saying, hey, wait until we get these values back. Then we're going to simply do an if statement and say if global dot world map array equals an empty array. So we currently have nothing saved in our array. Then what we're going to do is we're going to simply run a function called generate underscore new underscore world. And this is not created yet, but that's what's going to basically create that new world. All right. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to run global dot reset all inventories, because again, we're starting from scratch when we create a new world. If this is not the case, then we're simply going to go ahead and we're going to run a function called load underscore saved underscore world. All right. And we are going to create these functions in just a minute, but this is what's going to happen when the game first starts. We're going to recover all of our information. Then we're going to say, hey, if the world map doesn't equal anything, then we're going to initiate everything we need to create a new world. If that is not the case, then we're simply going to reload in everything we have in the saved map array. All right, awesome. So that's going to be everything in the function ready. Now these errors are going to stay here for a minute, but let's go ahead and do the first function, which is the generate new world. Let's go ahead and create that function, and then we're going to go ahead, generate new world. You can either copy it or type it out. That's up to you. I'm simply just going to copy and paste it, give it a colon, and open it up. All right, so a couple things to note about how we're going to generate this world. Now I'm generating the world based on exactly the size of all the blocks. If you remember, all the blocks are, I think, 0.2. So I did some calculations and found the best way to do that is with a separation of 25.6. So each block is going to be 25.6 spaces away from each other, x and y values, okay? So we're going to go ahead and create the max amount of blocks that we want, which I found the best way to do that is to equal that to 2020, okay? Now, do note, if we use this value 2020, the loading process is going to take about 30 to 40 seconds. So it's going to take about almost a minute because we're loading in so many blocks. Now for testing purposes, it's a good idea to keep this value a lot lower, such as 300, I find works pretty quick. So when we're testing things out, keeping it at 300 is a good idea. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put 300 right here. And then in front of it, I'm going to put a comment, and I'm just going to simply say for testing. All right. And then for this one, if you wanted to add a comment for it, you could say for live or for official. But this one is a good one to use for testing, so it basically loads pretty quick. All right. Because when we load in 2020 blocks, it takes almost a minute versus 300 only takes a couple seconds. Okay. But we'll keep it at this for now. And when we start testing, we'll probably run it once with this, and then after that, we'll just continually run it with this, okay? Awesome. So now that we have these here, let's move our way down. So let's go ahead, and we're gonna now specify a couple things, such as a variable representing the x spot. This is gonna be the starting spot for the x value. So I'm gonna do x spot, and I'm gonna go ahead, equal that to negative 1280. So that's going to be the starting spot of where it's going to start spawning the blocks. All right. Again, in the future, you can change this if you want to, but I think this works really well for the type of game we're making. So let's go ahead then. Also do a variable for a y spot. So the starting y spot of all the blocks. And I found the best way to do it is just one block lower, which of course is going to be the negative 25.6. So that's going to be basically right underneath the 0 value. All right, awesome. I'm going to back that up there a little bit. Perfect. All right, so now that we have our starting values here, we're going to go ahead and start a while loop. We're going to start with a while. And we're going to say if while number is greater than 0. So we're going to run this for every single time we want to create one. And how we're going to do that is simply by minusing our number minus equals 1. All right. So this is doing exactly what I said before. It's going to be taking, hey, I'm either going to be using this many blocks or this many blocks, and it's going to minus that. So this is determining how many blocks it's going to create when we generate a new world. All right. Awesome. So then apart from that, we're going to go ahead And we're simply going to say if y spot equals negative 25.6, which is the first y spot, then what we're going to do is we're going to create some nature blocks. So everything on this level is going to be a nature block. Anything below it will most likely be either dirt, stone, or bedrock, or even ores, all right? But the first layer is always going to be nature. And we're going to create a function for that next up, which is going to be called randomize underscore nature, all right? We are not going to create that right now. We will create that when we get to it after this function. But that's going to be like, hey, if we're on this level, when creating a new world, we're just going to create either the mushroom, the weeds, or we're going to be creating trees. Okay, awesome. Now, if it isn't that spot, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do an elif. So elif, if the y spot is greater than or equal to 0, and y spot is less than 102.4, this is going to be the dirt layer, all right? So we're going to have, of course, nature age equal that to null, because we are no longer going to be setting or creating any nature. But we are, though, going to create a new block, and we are simply going to equal that to our dirt block. So this is going to be the dirt layer, okay? Dot instantiate. We're also going to go ahead and we are going to set the block type equal to, double quotes, lowercase dirt, okay? So this is going to be the dirt blocks, which should be 3 blocks below the nature block, all right? Perfect. So make sure you have that there. Then we're going to do another elif, which is going to be the stone section. So we're going to say elif y spot, and we're going to say if it is greater than 76.8 and y spot is less than 384. And this, again, this is what I found to be the best sections to create these. So we'll have basically 1 layer of nature, 3 layers of dirt, and I think this is about like 8 or 6 layers of rock and ores. You can change that eventually if you wanted to. You would just have to, of course, minus or equals the 25.6. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and we're going to run a function. We're going to do an await because this is a little bit of a bigger function, which we're going to call randomize underscore or. All right, and we're going to be passing in that y spot. And the reason we're passing in that y spot is because we're only going to want to spawn certain ores at certain layers, such as we're going to have coals more towards the top, then we're going to have more irons in the middle, and then more diamonds on the bottom. And this is a really cool function we're going to create that's going to be able to do that. All right, so that's going to handle all the ore creation. All right, then we're going to have the last one, which is going to be the bedrock one. So let's go ahead and do another elif, and we're simply going to say y spot, and we're going to say greater than 384. All right, and if anything is greater than that, we're simply going to set nature age, equal that to null because we're not spawning nature there. We are going to create a new block, equal it to bedrock block dot instantiate, and then we're simply going to set block type equal to double quotes bedrock, just like that. Perfect. Awesome. And then once we do all these things here and set everything that we want to, then outside of the ifs and elifs, we're simply going to add child, and then we're going to be adding the child of the new block that we created. All right. We're also going to do new block dot global position, and we're going to go ahead and just equal that to the vector2 x spot that we currently have, and then comma y spot. Okay, perfect. And then we need to, of course, add it into our array. So to do that, we'll simply do our global dot world map array dot append, And then in the dot append, we're passing in a new array value, so give it some brackets. We're going to set the new block dot global position as the first value. You can copy it in or type it out, that's up to you. So the first value is that global position, comma, the block type that we said. And then, of course, we need to set the nature age. And sometimes it'll be null, unless it's, of course, a tree or something else that we need to add a nature age for. Okay, perfect. So that's going to handle all the creation. But because we are basically going through this over and over again, we need to change that X and Y spot. So after that, we'll simply go ahead and say X spot plus equals 25.6, which is going to basically be adding it over. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to have a simple if and say if X spot is greater than 1280. So basically the limit of how long we're making the world. Then what we're simply going to do is we're going to reset the X spot. So we're going to set our X spot back to the original, which is that negative 1280. And then we're also going to then go ahead for our Y spot plus equals 25.6. So basically it's going to be like a grid going through. And each time it gets to the end, it'll add a Y spot and it will go back to the original X spot, okay? And don't worry about these errors. We will go into these in the next couple functions, okay? Awesome. So remember, you can always check the source code. Let's see what we got so far, and looking good. All right, let's continue on to the next couple functions. So let's go ahead and do that randomize nature function. So let's copy that real quick. Let's go ahead, add a couple enters below. And then let's start it off. Let's go ahead, create a function for it. All right, so in here we're going to do a similar thing to what we did above. It's just nice to separate it. So let's go ahead, create a variable. We're going to call this rand for random. And this is going to be a random I range. All right, and the reason we're doing this is because we kind of want to randomize the type of things that are in the nature. We don't necessarily ever want it to have complete trees or have complete mushrooms. We want it to mostly just be the grass / weeds. And to do that, we're going to do this by using kind of like a little percentage. And we're going to start off with a 1 through 9 range. And what we're simply going to do is we're going to have an if statement and say if random is less than or equal to 2, then we're simply going to go ahead and set our new block equal to the tree dot instantiate. So basically we're giving it this much of a chance to say we want trees. All right, we'll give the majority to the weeds and also the grass, but we want a small majority chance to create trees and also mushrooms because they should be a little bit more rare to spawn. All right, so we'll say new block equals tree.instantiate. Then we're going to say block type. So block type equals double quotes tree. Then we're simply going to go ahead and do our new block dot trees underscore growth underscore val, and we're going to set that to 3. Then we're going to go ahead and set our nature age, and we're going to equal that to 0. All right, awesome, perfect. Now make sure the trees growth val equals the same thing we have in trees here. So if we have all the way up, yep, trees growth val, make sure that matches up or you're going to get an error in the near future. So let's go ahead and make sure that's there. Perfect. Now for the next one, let's go ahead. We're going to do another if. We're going to say if random is greater than or equal to 3 and random is less than or equal to 7. All right. So if this is the case, then we're going to go ahead and set it to weeds or plant, I think is what we named it. So let's paste that there. Let's do plants, or is it plants or plant? Plant. And then we're going to go ahead and set the, I think we're setting the nature age to null, and we don't need to set this tree's growth val because it's not a tree. So we'll simply set this to null instead of 0 here, just like that. Perfect. And we can double check what we set for the block type by simply going into the block script. And double checking it. Yes, we did plant, so make sure it is plant. And we should be okay. Awesome. All right, so that's going to be this one here. Make sure that we set this again to weeds. Perfect. All right. Then let's copy this whole thing again. Let's paste it below. This one's going to be for the mushrooms. And instead of all this, we'll just simply go ahead and say if it is equal to or greater than 8. And then we need to change what we're creating. So we're going to do mushroom for this. And then we can keep, or no, we're going to change this to mushroom also. Just like that. Perfect. Awesome. And that's going to go ahead and create the mushroom. And that should be everything we need for the randomized nature. So go ahead, save that. Looking good. Now we can do the randomized ore. Now this one's a little different because again, like I said, this is going to give it more of a chance in case it's lower. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's add a couple enters below. Let's go ahead, do function. And just to make sure we don't spell it, let's keep the whole name here. Pass it in here, paste it, perfect. Awesome. But because we're passing in something, we need to give it that parentheses, and we need to say, let's just call it y spot because that's what we're passing in the first place. And we know that that is technically going to be a type of int. All right. It could be a float, I guess, but I think we'll be okay if it's an int. If it isn't, then that's okay. We'll change it to float later on. But I'm going to keep it at int for now. Let's go ahead now for this. The first thing we're going to set, because we know it's not going to have any nature, let's go to nature age and equal that to null. Perfect, because no matter what it makes here, it's not going to be in nature age. Then we're going to also do the same thing we did with the plants. We're going to say variable rand equals random i range. But this time, because we have a lot more things we can create in here, I'm going to do 1, 150. All right, perfect. All right, now we can go ahead and start a couple ifs. We're simply going to go ahead and say if the random, and we're going to say is less than or equal to 2. If that is the case, then we're going to go ahead, pass in another if, and say if y spot is greater than 250. Then we're going to go ahead and simply set our new block equal to diamond block dot instantiate. And then, of course, we need to also set the block type equal to double quotes diamond. Perfect. If that's not the case, we're just simply going to do an else, and we're going to simply set our new block equal to stone block. All right, because of course if it's not going to create diamond, then we just want it to create a regular stone. All right, and then of course we need to set the block type as well, which is going to be equal to double quotes stone. All right, perfect. Awesome. Then what we could simply do is just copy this whole thing here. So I'm going to copy this. So there's about like a 2 out of 150 chance that it's going to create diamonds, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if we are making like 2,000 blocks, there actually probably is going to be quite a few. So the next one we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and do it for the iron, and for the range, we're going to say if it is greater than or equal to 3, and the random is less than or equal to 7. Okay, awesome. And then for the y spot, we're not going to do it unless it is greater than 180. Okay, so 180. Again, these are just values I'm doing. You can do different ones if you want, but let's do this for the iron. So let's go ahead, iron block. There we go. And then don't forget to change the type to iron as well. Awesome. Perfect. And the rest we can keep the same, because if it's not the case, then we're simply going to create a stone. So now we need to go ahead and do the coal one. So let's go ahead and let's copy this whole thing, and let's do that there. Or you know what, better yet, I think for the coal one, we'll do it a little different. We'll go ahead and do an if our random, and we'll say is just greater than or equal to 8. If that's the case, and our random is less than or equal to 11, Then we'll simply go ahead, and in here we'll set that new block. We'll do equal to coal block dot instantiate, and then don't forget the type. So block type equal that to coal, and of course, if that doesn't work, then we'll say and random is greater than or equal to 12. Then we'll just have anything regular equals stone. Okay. So then we'll go ahead and we will simply do what we just did below, but we'll do for the stone. So let's just take everything in one of the else's and paste it in. And there we go. Perfect. Awesome. All right, and there we go. Awesome. So we are going to have a lot of coal, but that's okay. We do want a lot of coal, but we definitely want way more stone, which is a high percentage of the stone happening. Now, I found this works the best. Remember, you can always customize this if you want to. That's completely up to you, but I think that works really well. And again, we should no longer have errors for those in here. We still are going to have the load saved world, but we will get to that up next. All right, awesome. Let's save what we got, and looking good. All right, let's go ahead and create the last function now. This is going to be the load saved world. Let's go ahead, add a couple enters here. All right, so let's go ahead, let's do function. Let's do our load underscore saved underscore world, parentheses, colon, and then if we put like a pass here, that red should go away unless we spelled it wrong, which it's good, perfect. All right, so in here, we're basically going to just loop through our global world map array and place everything with, of course, the position that we saved and the type it is. So it's going to be a bunch of ifs here because we have a lot of different block types. So let's start off with our for block in global dot world map array. So we're going to be going through each one, and we're going to start off with our if, our block, and the type, if you remember, is the 1 value, not the 0. And we're going to say if that equals, let's say dirt. If it equals dirt, then we're simply going to go ahead and we're going to set our new block equal to dirt block dot instantiate. All right, now we need to do this for each type. So I think the best way is to simply just copy it, and let's just paste it for each one. So let's do the next one, which is going to be stone. So let's do stone, and then a stone block down here. Perfect. Let's do the next one. Let's go ahead, do coal. Let's do coal, and then go ahead, coal block. Perfect. Let's go ahead. Let's do iron. Iron. And then we're going to go ahead, do iron block. Perfect. Let's go ahead, do diamond. Diamond. Make sure you spell those right or it's going to cause issues for us. Diamond block. Perfect. All right, and then we're going to go ahead. Next one. Let's do bedrock. Let's go ahead, bedrock. Bedrock here as well. Perfect. And next one we're going to do, let's go ahead. We could do chest. Chest. And then chest block here. Perfect. Then we can go ahead. We could do torch. And then we're going to do torch block here. Perfect. Then we can add some of the nature stuff. Let's go ahead, do tree. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do tree block. It should pop up. Or just tree, I guess is what we called it. Then we can go ahead. We can do plant. Which is going to be just, I think we did weeds for this. Yep. And then the next one, we're going to go ahead. We can do mushroom. Some mushroom. And then go ahead, do mushroom here as well. Perfect. Awesome. Now we simply just have to go ahead and add child. New block. And then the last thing, of course, is new block dot global. Make sure you spell it right. Global underscore position equals our block value of 0, which is that saved global position. Awesome. Now I know that was a lot. Remember, you can always check the source code. We're going to debug it in just a second too to make sure everything looks good. Let's go ahead and save that. Perfect. Awesome. All right, and no errors. We should be set. All right, let's save again. Let's go back to 2D view, and there we go. Before we test it out, I did notice one thing. If we go to our scripts and then go to our global script, I noticed that we put lowercase data for our file path. So let's change that for each type of file that we're using. So data should be capital, all caps. So let's go ahead and just put that in for each one we have. There should be, I think, 3 or 4. One there, one here, and then also one over here. So let's add all those in there. Perfect. Let's save that. There we go. And again, if you want this to load a lot faster, you can go simply into the Earth, scroll on up to where we have the amount of blocks, and just simply lower that down to like 300. 220 will take about a couple minutes, I think, but I'm going to keep it at 220 and just pause. So let's go back to 2D. Another thing to do also is to add a camera so we can view the entire thing. Normally the camera will only be a portion of this, but because we're testing and we want to make sure all the blocks are filled out, let's add a bigger camera. So let's go to add child node, camera 2D. Let's change the zoom to 0.3 so it'll cover the entire thing. There we go. Go ahead and save that. Another thing you can do also though is simply turn off the canvas modulate so we can view everything. Now it'll be kind of bright, but it will show you everything that we need to have in it, okay? So let's go ahead, start current scene, and let's let that load. All right, looks like it loaded up, and it looks like the entire map has filled out the way we wanted it to. Awesome. So if we go in and zoom it, I think we noticed that it only goes down to about these spots here. So if you wanted to make the world bigger, then you would simply just have to, of course, add more blocks, and then of course just make the overall one just bigger in general. If you wanted to add more dirt blocks, you could add more dirt sections, more stone sections, and all that. But it looks like we have everything in here. We have all the nature stuff on the top. We have the grass ones on the top. And then we also have the dirt, the stone, and it looks like there is more coal spawning towards the top and iron in the midsection, and then of course some diamonds near the bottom. And then last but not least, all of the bedrock. But so far, everything looks to be working pretty great. Awesome, and good job. Let's go ahead, close that up. Don't forget to save what you got, and looking good. I really hope you're enjoying this course, but if you would like to continue it, you will have to become a student at Red Fools Academy. On first sign up, you will get a free 7 days back guarantee. Once a member, you will have full access to not only this course, but all of our courses in game, app, and website development. On top of that, you will get full support from the Red Fools Studio team. A link will be attached to the description, and you can also use this URL as seen below. See you in the lectures!